conservatism and the fairness doctrine and where we've gone askew, so to speak. The situation with that military exercise, executed by the Iranian military to take out 40 or 1/3 roughly of the Russian bombers. What I find interesting is that, first of all, military experts from across the world are saying it is one of the most significant exercises of its kind since World War II, just because of the scope and because of the way that they did it. But you know what's interesting? There has been not a peep from the White House. Nothing. Not from the Department of Defense, not from the State Department, nowhere. No acknowledgement of it, no reference to it. You could use this as an opportunity to say, through the support of the American taxpayer, what an amazing accomplishment by the Ukrainian military. But no, nothing like that at all. That should tell you a lot. So you can form your own opinions and you make your own interpretations about that. But before I get too deep into today's show, just another daily reminder of this event that's coming up in my state. If you go to the link tree that's in my bio, you'll see this. It's called Beats for Good. And then there's a voting form. So if you haven't joined us this week, or if you didn't see my video that I put out yesterday, it's a competition that's opened up to high school musicians in Vermont, New Hampshire, and upstate New York. And the winning entry gets to open a massive concert headlined by the Fray and by the Plain White T's. Now, my daughter's band was chosen as a finalist of the 127 entries. So if you go to the link tree in my bio, you hit voting form, and then you're looking for the band Punch. That's her band. She's the blonde-haired kid singing at the front of the stage. If you wouldn't mind, I would be so honored if you did that, because voting closes on Friday. And the winning act, like I said, gets to open the show. And last year, there was 11,000 people there. So, and the crowd arrives early because it's an all-day festival. There's food, there's a beer garden. It's really crazy. The stage is down at the bottom of the hill, and this entire venue fills up. So imagine if you were a high school kid and you get to perform in front of 11,000 people on a full-on stage with well-renowned musicians and the best equipment. So again, I would appreciate it. You'll probably hear me mention it a couple times throughout the show today. But anyway, thank you in advance for that. Okay, so back to the whole situation with that amazing exercise. There's already been some videos that are played, so I'll just play some sound for you. Kind of like almost like the highlights of what happened, because again, I don't think it's interesting that it's not getting any coverage. And I think that's the part that I think is really interesting for us to kind of talk about a little bit today. Just the fact of what it meant for this entire, because it is a turning point in this conflict. No doubt about it. We had a conversation, Felice and I had a conversation yesterday with someone who just doesn't get it, we were describing to him Russian propaganda, right? We were talking about giving numerous examples, and his response was, what about Ukrainian propaganda? It's like, okay, dude, I don't know what to tell you with that. But anyway, so this is a little bit of sound. This is kind of like the highlights of what happened, or how the Ukrainian army military pulled this off. So I'll just play this for you, then we can talk about it.
Ukrainian engineers designed a clever drone launching system disguised as ordinary wooden cabins mounted on the backs of cargo trucks. These mobile containers looked like simple rural sheds, but inside they held reinforced structures, hidden launch platforms, battery charging stations, and remote-controlled roof mechanisms. The design allowed for drones to be launched either vertically or at an angle, depending on their type, while built-in signal shielding helped them avoid early detection by Russian surveillance. Once these mobile silos were ready, Ukrainian intelligence operatives, possibly with help from local sympathizers, moved them deep into Russian territory. The trucks were quietly driven to pre-selected sites near key airbases, parked in places like forests, farms, or industrial areas where they blended into the landscape. They remained dormant for days or even weeks, with drones preloaded, charged, and waiting for the command to strike. When the time came, encrypted activation signals were sent remotely. The roofs of the containers slid open and the drones lifted off, some vertically, others using ramps or compressed air launch systems for a silent start. Because the launch sites were positioned just a few kilometers around 2 miles from their targets, the drones were able to reach their objectives quickly, leaving little time for Russian defenses to react. Operators guided them in real time using live video feeds, steering the drones with precision toward parked aircraft, fuel depots, and radar installations.
That's amazing. I mean, it really is amazing. You know, again, sophisticated and rudimentary at the same time, like wood frames inside the back of these cargo vans that they've been working on for a long time. There's some guesstimates that they've been planning this for over a year. So you need a little bit of cooperation and collaboration. So they drive these trucks into Russian territory and they park them in various spots within a couple of kilometers. Within a couple of kilometers of the airports, and they took out 1/3 of Russian strategic bombers. Now, what does that do from now going forward? Every cargo truck driving on Russian roads has to be investigated? Is that what that means? I mean, potentially. No comment from our government as of yet. No statement from the Department of Defense. No, again, you could make the case that some of the resources that American taxpayers have been providing to the Ukrainian government was instrumental in this. So why not celebrate it? Why not use that opportunity to say, hey, you see what we did? This is how important this was. This was an amazing exercise, executed by the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian military, but nothing. Gee, I wonder why. Why would that be? Really, why would that be? So here we are. So what happens now? So does every single cargo truck have to get investigated? It may come to that. Which is going to do what? Which is going to, eliminate resources to be doing something else, create a lot of confusion, a lot of chaos. I got to do something here. Hold on a second. I got to do this. Give me a second. Hold on. Got to start this goal thing. All right. Hold on. Okay, there we go. Done. New sub goal. So, I just think it's amazing. I really think that what they did. There's a video. There's also a video on YouTube for a more detailed explanation. It comes from AI Telly. If you want to follow that account, and I'll post this link in the Discord, so the mods can post it in the group chat as well. I just think it's really telling to me. Just not to reiterate, I think it's telling that there's no statement from the White House, like none. I don't know how. How do you not discuss this? A conflict that has grabbed our attention for 3 years now, right? How do you like not talk about it? I don't get it. But anyway, that's a different conversation. But I just thought it was fascinating. All right, so shifting to domestic politics, because now we know that the big beautiful bullshit pile of crap bill is in the Senate. So there's a lot of wrangling that's going to happen, and I'm going to break that down for you as best I can. I do want to remind you of a couple of things, though, because the statement that Joni Ernst, you've probably seen it by now. Joni Ernst going out and telling her voters in Iowa that, hey, everybody's going to die, and then her double down bullshit, and then she was caught. By the way, she was caught in. I think I have the sound for that too. She was caught trying to sneak out. Like through the elevator, trying to sneak away. Do I have that? I think I do. Yeah, here you go. This is interesting. Joni.
By your comments from the town hall last week, Senator.
I'm very compassionate, and you need to listen to the entire conversation.
They did.
Can you explain?
We want to protect the most vulnerable.
Okay. I'm very compassionate, and you need to listen to the entire conversation. Ernst's now viral musings on mortality came during a contentious town hall as attendees grilled the senator about a GOP-backed domestic policy bill that passed the House last month. The legislation titled the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, after President Trump referred to the measure that way, would impose work requirements on some Medicaid recipients, among other changes. At one point, as Ernst explained some of the legislation's changes to the low-income health insurance program, a person appeared to yell that people will lose their lives. People are not, well, we are all going to die, for heaven's sake. And then she doubled down her statement from the cemetery. I want to clear up a few things because I did a little bit of research for you. So the claim that in an attempt to justify this, again, this is all part of our conversation today, the manipulation of conservative media, the manipulation of conservative media, the manipulation of the minds of people in an attempt to try to justify their hatred, right? Because conservatives are the problem. They want to tell you that the reason that they're cutting Medicaid. So now, just to be clear, now they're not even defending the fact that they are, in fact, cutting Medicaid. Before they told us they weren't cutting it, but now they're saying, yeah, but we're doing it to kick 1.4 million illegals off of Medicaid, which is what Joni Ernst was referring to. I took some notes. First of all, undocumented immigrants are not eligible for Medicaid. Okay, that is not there. There are no eligibility requirements, with the exception of emergency room care, and that accounts for less than 1% of Medicaid expenses. Less than 1%. They're not eligible for it. So the fact that they're saying they're going to kick 1.4 million people off is a bold-faced lie. Less than 1%. Now, I will acknowledge that I think there are 14 states that do offer some Medicaid protections, but they're for children and for pregnant mothers. Okay? Again, the target is 10% cut. Less than 1% goes to support undocumented immigrants who have to have emergency care in an ER, right? And the rest goes to support women, pregnant women, and children. So conservatives are the problem. This is not my opinion. This is what the data tells us. We know that Medicaid eligibility does not extend to undocumented immigrants. We know that the only way that they can receive any kind of coverage is if it's an ER visit. We know that that accounts to less than 1%. The target from the Commerce Committee, who's been tasked to carve out budget items, is 10%. The math ain't mathin', friends. The math just ain't mathin'. So you can make your own assumptions, and you can allow the right wing to continue to lie to you, and you can watch Mike Johnson or Donald Trump or members of the Senate tell you that we're not touching benefits. The story has changed over the last few weeks, because initially it's like, we're not cutting benefits. We're not cutting benefits. Yes, you are cutting benefits. Okay. So then that brings us to the fact that the bill is now in the Senate. We know that there's been some hand-wringing already by a few of the budget hawks in the Senate, some wanting more cuts. Rand Paul coming out and saying, I'm not going to support anything that drives up the deficit. He's not going to support anything that's going to extend or raise the debt ceiling. So I tried to break this down, but then I found a video from the news girl, and I love her stuff anyway. So I think it's about 5 minutes, but I think this is a really good breakdown, and then we can talk about it a little bit more on the other side, as they say. So I'll just play this sound for you, and then we can get into it as soon as I can find it.
Do you care to clarify your comment?
That's not it. Hold on. Where is it? Okay, right here. So I'll play this for you, and then we can talk about it.
Beautiful Bill is facing a bird bath starting tonight. No, not that kind of bird bath. A bird bath. I'm going to explain exactly what that obscure but super important procedure is in this video, why it could bring huge changes to the big, beautiful bill, including to that controversial provision in the House version that would significantly restrict federal courts from enforcing contempt orders, and why it should matter to you. So for you to understand the bird bath, you need to remember, after the November election, Republicans decided that they were going to use a controversial procedure called reconciliation to get President Trump's agenda passed through Congress. They are using reconciliation to pass the big, beautiful bill. Now, reconciliation allows specific, and that word is important, types of legislation.
What she's talking about specifically is that they had to change the rules because they knew that they could not do that. This budget was not going to survive the filibuster in the Senate, and likely not going to survive the House. So they had to attempt to change the rules, which tells you a lot, to try to get this passed. Okay.
To pass in both the House and the Senate with just a simple majority. And that's a big deal, because that means a reconciliation bill is not subject to the filibuster. So no need to get 60 votes. Just 51 votes would get it done. And in case you didn't know, there are 53 Republican senators. So technically, if they all stick together and vote yes, they could easily pass the big, beautiful bill through reconciliation, but not so fast. First of all, Senate Republicans are not sticking together. at least not right now, when it comes to a lot of what was passed in the House version of the big, beautiful bill. There's lots in it that they don't like. And on top of that, remember I said specific legislation. Well, that's where the bird bath comes into play. If Senate Republicans want to use reconciliation to pass the big, beautiful bill, every single thing in it must comply with the bird rule. And if it doesn't, that thing is out. The process of determining whether an item in a bill complies with the bird rule is called the bird bath, like cleaning up the bill. The bird rule is a law that only applies in the Senate. It does not apply to the House. And it says, if you want to use reconciliation in the Senate to pass your bill, the only types of provisions that can be included in that bill are ones that deal directly with budgetary issues. Any unrelated or extraneous provisions cannot be included. Those have to be cut out. Extraneous provisions include, for example, items that would increase the deficit beyond 10 years, or items that have no budgetary impact at all, like policy changes. And who gets to decide what violates the bird rule? Well, in the end, it comes down to a judgment call.
Basically, again, I'll go back to this in just a second, but it's the budgetary side, right? So there are rules regarding how policy legislation is introduced in the Senate, specifically under the Byrd rule, that can't be. And so the Republican Party is going to attempt to claim that the tax cuts, the extension of the TCJA, are what's referred to as budget neutral, meaning it's not going to add. The only way to get reconciliation through is this machination of all these kinds of things, which she's trying to explain. So there you go.
By the Senate parliamentarian. The Senate parliamentarian is like the official advisor to the United States Senate. He or she is the keeper of all the quirky rules and procedures that govern the Senate. The current parliamentarian is Elizabeth McDonough. She is one of the longest serving parliamentarians in history and has been in that position since 2012. The parliamentarian is not elected. He or she is selected by a Senate majority leader from among the senior staff and serves at the pleasure of whichever Senate majority leader is in power. Obviously, McDonough has served under Senate Republican control and Senate Democrat control. She's been around a while. So now that you understand that, which provisions of the big, beautiful bill may run afoul of the parliamentarian or the Byrd rule during the Byrd bath? Well, there are several that you may be interested in, including that one that everyone is talking about on social media. You know, the provision that passed in the House version that has to do with the federal court's ability to enforce contempt charges.
So in case you missed that, there was a provision that was slid into this big, beautiful bill that made it impossible for federal courts to hold an elected official in contempt. Think about that, okay? That is in this big, beautiful bill that promised to reshape the American economy, as long as people are being held, as long as people aren't being able to held accountable. So that was in this particular bill. So this is something that she's pointing out is likely going to either have to be carved out or scrapped altogether.
You may have also heard of it as Section 70302. Yeah, that's probably going to be ruled by the parliamentarian to be a policy provision, not a budgetary provision.
Exactly.
So it has a very good chance of being cut. Now, perhaps the biggest item that may run afoul of the Byrd rule in the Senate is the provision in the big, beautiful bill that makes the 2017 Trump tax cuts permanent, which is like the centerpiece of Trump's new agenda. Senate Republicans are using a controversial accounting method to zero out the cost of those tax cuts. They argue because the bill is just extending an existing budgetary policy, technically that makes it budget neutral. But Democrats say that's absolutely ridiculous. They say if those tax cuts are extended, it would balloon the deficit well beyond the 10-year budget window. And if the parliamentarian agrees and decides that, yeah, it does increase the deficit past those 10 years, it too may violate the Byrd rule. There are tons of other potential Byrd rule problems in the House version of the big, beautiful bill, including the AI provisions, the gun regulations, and the changes to Planned Parenthood. But beyond the Byrd rule, the big, beautiful bill has other significant challenges. Lots of Senate Republicans do not agree with what the House Republicans passed. Some Republican senators do not like those drastic Medicaid cuts. Others are not fans of the fact that this bill is going to increase the federal deficit by $2.3 trillion, and they want to see bigger spending cuts. Other senators want to restore the clean energy tax breaks that the House cut out. and others want to see the child tax credit increased. And at least one senator is a hard no because the big, beautiful bill increases the
Rand
debt
Paul.
ceiling by $4 trillion. So this bird bath is going to play out for the next few weeks, and I'll keep you posted on what.
Okay, so the audio sometimes, when you play something from TikTok, sometimes it has these spikes in audio. I don't know why that happened, but in general, what she's referring to is these, because of the deal that the House made through the Senate, right, was that we're going to do this via reconciliation in an attempt to avoid the filibuster, as it takes 60 votes to pass when it's not subject to the filibuster, or when it is, I should say. So here we are, right? All these provisions that she called out, many Republicans are saying, we don't like this or we can't support this. So what that means in our legislative process is if there is any change to the big, beautiful bill that's coming from the House, if the Senate makes any changes, it has to go back to the House. So Mike Johnson's goal was to get this across the finish line prior to the 4th of July. Now, it doesn't seem likely that that's going to happen. They are attempting to fast track. GOP senators have been working on this in advance of getting the bill, so they kind of know what's in it. But she called out a few things that are obviously going to be peeled away because they're not subject to the budget reconciliation process. For example, 70302, which is, again, as we outlined, the removing the ability for federal judge to hold federal officials in contempt. That is, I mean, think about that, right? What the hell is the point of putting that in unless you're trying to hide corruption? I mean, come on. There's no reason. So we'll be tracking it. So it's in the House, as of today. So we'll see. I'm sorry, it's in the Senate as of today. So contact your senators, please. This is something that you should, obviously, as we discuss in this space on the regular, please contact your senators. Please inform them that you're not interested in them voting for something that's going to take the rights of people away. We certainly don't want that to happen. Now, do we? So again, the big, beautiful bill that will that will kick millions of Americans off of Medicaid, that will cut SNAP benefits so that children in our country who are already food insecure will have less access to food. And there are Senate Republicans who want to cut more. But as long as we continue to increase the Homeland Security budget and our military budget, that's fine. As long as we can continue to offer tax breaks to the richest among us, that's fine. We've got to do those things, because if we don't do those things, we'll lose our billionaire donors. 202-224-3121. Thank you. 202-224-3121 is the switchboard in DC. 202-224-3121. Okay? You know what to do. All right. Two other things. Also in the link tree that's in my bio, along with the Beats for Good, please vote for Punch. You'll see that in there. Our friend Ryan, Mr. Wheels, has launched a new website and is now hosting his own lives on Monday. You'll find that link in the link tree in my bio. There's a lot of good stuff in there. As a reminder, too, please join our Discord. You can find that link in the link tree as well. Discord is where all the action happens. Our community is incredible. There has been, I am humbled by the amount of connections that our Discord community has created for people. It's just amazing. So if you want to kind of keep up to speed on things, because we know the TikTok deadline, I haven't talked about it, but the TikTok deadline is coming up next week. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. Something tells me it's not going anywhere. Like, we would have heard about it. It's not going anywhere. We have a plan. We are streaming on YouTube currently. Hello on YouTube if you're watching over there. So if this goes away, we'll end up over there. So that's part of our future. But again, Discord is the place. We also communicate with you through our Facts HQ, which is FactsStillMatter.site. You can find that link there as well. So, and again, we are crowdfunded, so anything you can do to support the channel, we appreciate. All right, I want to talk a little bit. So today's topic is about conservatives are the problem, and as I talk to you guys regularly about, what I mean by all of this. It's that I don't like the Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, communist label doesn't apply, because it should be boiled down to two distinct categories. You are either supporting progress, moving the needle forward in our nation, or you are comfortable with things remaining the same. So you're either a progressive or you're a conservative, right? We talk about it a lot, and I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but I don't think there's any other way to really frame it, to be honest. Now, progressives somehow have gotten this bad label that like the right likes to use, again, through Russian propaganda, as we learned yesterday. The right likes to use that as a catchword to say progressives are communists or socialists or whatever, and even though they don't even know what any of those things are. But it's simple, really. It's about progress, right? We want to move our society forward. So we know, for example, that the sentiment around things that would be considered progressive policies are wildly popular. The overwhelming majority of Americans believe that there should be universal health care. That includes independents, Republicans, Democrats, all across the political spectrum. We know that the overwhelming majority of Americans believe that women should have rights to choose, rights to their body, reproductive health care. We know that. We know that the majority of Americans believe that there should be some semblance of responsible gun legislation. We know that. Are those progressive, radical policies? Progressives get labeled as radicals, right? I mean, I'm a progressive. I vote with Democrats because they are close. They're the train that gets me closest to where I want to go. But are those radical ideas? Really? Like guaranteeing kids can eat? Right? Guaranteeing that, because I believe that healthcare is a human right. That's radical. So that's when I say that there are conservatives are the problem, because there are moderate Democrats that attempt to toe the line between, the moderate left and the moderate right. In our system of government, right, you've got the factions, you've got the wings of the party. We've got the Freedom Caucus wing on the right, which is extreme. They're the ones that are really they're the ones that play in the culture war space, right? And then you've got the left, and people want to talk about the extreme left. There is no extreme left in our body politic. Now, there are people who are extreme, but I'm talking in the body politic. The furthest left that people can say, they use AOC or they use the Squad or they use Bernie. And again, think about what the foundational elements of their policies are, like I just discussed. Healthcare, education, reproductive rights, civil liberties, etc. Is that extreme? Where on the other side, you've got the culture war. You've got people like Nancy Mace using the T slur in regard to transgender people. You've got MTG and her bullshit. You've got all the rhetoric, all the hate, all the scapegoating, all the targeted fascistic tendencies. So that's the divide, right? That's the extreme right. And then for purpose of this argument, we'll say the extreme left, even though there is none. And then there's everybody else. So everybody else would be like you might vote a little bit more progressively on the left. You're going to vote a little bit more conservatively on the right. But it's those people, it's the people that we really don't hear from very much, especially in the House. They're the ones that are the tiebreakers many times, right? They're the ones that don't crave attention. They're the ones that are there to do their job. And I don't think those people in our system of government get recognized enough for keeping the ship from crashing into the fucking iceberg. They're the moderates, right? The moderates that are on both sides. I don't like moderates because I don't think moderates take a stand enough for things. But in our system of government, bicameral government, it requires negotiation. That's the only way it was designed and built that way. So when we're trying to duke it out in the streets, you're going to hear voices from the left. You're going to hear voices from the right. The Freedom Caucus, the right, and in right-wing politics through the propaganda machine has done a significantly better job of speaking to their voters. I think the left speaks past potential voters, right? I think the left, the purity test on the left is getting a little bit frustrating for me, right? You're not even allowed to make a single mistake. And I think that's dangerous as we're trying to save our country. I think two things can be true. You can call balls and strikes, but you also have to say, okay, let's look at the body of work here. Let's look at the body. I'm not talking about, horrible racist tropes and things like that. I'm talking about, just the day to day. All right. We have to keep that in mind as we sort of move through this cycle, because our government requires compromise. Okay? Our government requires the ability for everybody involved to be able to discuss things to get legislation across the table or across the finish line. I say that because, we hear from the right very often that they want to just have single issue, single item bills. We know that can't happen. That is just fresh meat to their base. So to pass legislation like this, think about what we're talking about here. They have to change the rules so that they can get an extreme budget bill, which is going to remove liberties, remove rights from people. And I think it's really important to call that out. Never before in our history have we passed legislation to take rights away from people until this era of our politics. Think about it, right? Your society advances. Therefore, your legislation, your laws advance with it, ideally. There was a time in our history when women didn't have the right to vote. So we passed the 19th Amendment, Civil Rights Acts from the 60s, the recognition of same-sex couples, things like that, right? The society moving forward. Now, because of conservatism, Christian nationalism, whatever else you want to call it, a corrupt court, now we are actually introducing a legislation to take rights away from people. I don't know if people think about it in those terms enough. I was thinking about it a little bit yesterday. That's kind of where we are. We're attempting, the GOP and the conservatives amongst us are attempting to pass legislation to take rights away from people. Dobbs, we know the Obergefell decision is pending, potentially same-sex marriages, interracial marriages, things like that. All those things have been floated around, right? And the right likes to say, you guys are just gaslighting, you're fear-mongering. Have they done it yet? The fact that they're talking about it is crazy. So you change the rules to be able to pass your highly partisan anti-civil liberties agenda, which gets us to this whole conservatism thing. So what I decided to do is kind of just look at like the history of conservatism and where it comes from and how it's here and how the name has gotten sort of spun around. Before I do that, let me see. Do I have that? No, I don't need to do that. What is this? I'll play that in a minute. I just did that one.
But according to the...
Okay, I did that one. Okay, I'll get into it. So when we think of conservatism, most people, at least in our age group, most people think of Ronald Reagan, right? And the adoption of what's considered conservatism has lived with the right. So people like to say that they are fiscally conservative, socially liberal. No, you're not. You can't. I used to think that myself. Now, in your house, maybe you're like, you know what? I stand 10 toes down with the rights of other people, but I got to really watch my pennies. Like I got to make sure that I'm only spending what I can spend. I think that's a different equation. I'm talking about politically speaking, legislatively, passing bills, signing bills into law. You can't be fiscally conservative and socially liberal because being socially liberal requires you to make sure you're funding things that need to be funding. Public education, public health, rights and civil liberties for all Americans, responsible and humanitarian, immigration laws. I think immigration should be based on economic factors, family reunification, and need. Seriously. I think if you broke it down that way, we've got 9 million positions, 9 million open jobs in our country. We need immigration because we can fill those jobs. I don't want to separate families, and as long as it's humanitarian, I think if we can land in those three categories, I think we could solve our immigration problem without too much rhetoric. Neither side wants to do it. Okay, neither side wants to do it. Every side, both sides of the political spectrum here, want to use human beings who are attempting to have a better life crossing the southern border as political fodder, and it's bullshit. Okay. All right, so history of conservatism in America is rich and complex narrative that has evolved significantly over the centuries. I'm going to try to break this down as best I can because there's a history there, and then we can start to see where it started to shift. Southern strategy, Dixiecrats. Of course, the right doesn't want to talk about that, but we'll get there. Colonial conservatism. Many early settlers brought European notions of hierarchy and order. This is the 1600s through the 1830s. Supporting institutions like monarchy and the Church of England. However, the American Revolution also fostered ideas of liberty and limited government, which became foundational. So if you think about the establishment of our colonies, of our nation, right? Conservative. You want smaller government. You don't want to be oppressed by the king. So it started off as conservative. That makes sense. Federalists then versus Jeffersonians. In the early republic, the Federalists, Alexander Hamilton, emphasized strong central government, economic elites, and stability. An early conservative inclination. In contrast, Jeffersonian Republicans for agrarianism and states' rights, but their own conservative bent on maintaining traditional structures. So they wanted to see an expansion of civil liberties, but kind of held on to their conservative belief set, right? Antebellum and post-Civil War era, which is 1830s to the 1900s, which got us through the Civil War, through the Industrial Revolution as we started the 20th century. Whigs and classical liberalism. The Whig Party, a precursor to modern conservatism, favored economic modernization, social order, and moral reform. Okay, sure. Southern conservatism. We started to see the break. In the South, conservatism became intertwined with the defense of slavery, plantation aristocracy, and later white supremacy during the Reconstruction and Jim Crow. So it was that time, obviously, you can point to the Civil War. You know, the right likes to say it was about states' rights. It was about states' rights to own people. Let's be honest as to what it was. And then that carried through Reconstruction into the Jim Crow era of the early 20th century. So that's really where the break started. You started to see a large subsets in our population to say, wait a second here. Wait a second. We don't think owning people is a very good thing. And some people said, well, we do. So you started to see the divide, right? I'm trying to make it as simple as possible, but that's a foundational element as to where the split happened. And then the progressive era, and then the interwar period, which was 1900 through World War II. Progressive challenges. Progressives like Theodore Roosevelt pushed for reforms, regulation, and social justice, challenging older conservative frameworks. So again, as our society is evolving and our society is changing and our population is growing and we are becoming more diverse as a country because of immigration, whether it be Poles or Italians or Chinese or African American or whatever that might be, right? Whatever that might look like, we were becoming more diverse as a society. The Irish, right? So recognition from Teddy Roosevelt to say, okay, our society looks different. So therefore, our society should be different. A lot of pushback. And that same sort of, anti-immigration sentiment, anti-diversity sentiment continues today. A conservative reaction, business leaders, anti-unionists, and constitutional originalists push back, favoring laissez-faire economics and limited government. The claim was limited government. We do not want to expand rights for people. So they'll use the term small government, but it's really about suppression. It's really about maintaining the classist order. And that has continued today, although it's gotten worse. 1920s conservatism, presidents like Warren G. Harding, Calvin Coolidge emphasized pro-business policies, tax cuts, and isolationism. Okay? 1920s, the guys are the smartest chat on TikTok. We know what happened with things like pro-business, tax cuts, and isolationism. It led directly to the Great Depression, the continuation of isolationism, not only domestically, right? So conservative politics, right? Isolationism led to, arguably, the rise of the Reich. America first, right? Keep things at home. We have to focus on ourselves before we focus on anybody else. So we turn a blind eye. Post-World War I, Versailles Treaty made it very, very clear that the Reich in Germany, as far as their reconstruction, had to follow some rules. They didn't. They violated every rule there was because no one called them out. No one in particular, the West. So that allowed the growth of the Reich. Here we are, right? Then the Great Depression and the New Deal. The New Deal under FDR prompted conservative resistance, especially among business leaders and libertarians. Groups like the American Liberty League opposed government expansion. Think about the New Deal, welfare programs, Social Security, things like that to protect our citizenry, to invest in America, to make our citizens better. Who were the obstacles? Conservatives were the obstacles. We're not going to label party. The purpose of this exercise today is to remind people that it's not a party affiliation. It has become one, but it's about conservatives being the problem. Conservatives holding back progress. The Great Depression, we know isolationism led to it. Pro-business policies led to it. You can be pro-business without giving government handouts to businesses who take advantage of it and they don't circulate the money. So here we are now, the New Deal. Massive overturn of our society as it came to the social infrastructure and the support structure for those marginalized, right? Here we go. Conservatives, see, I fell into that trap too. Conservatives opposed it. They opposed the expansion of government because in their minds, they're still hung up on the limited government. But what does that mean? That means they like the fact that white people and white men in particular were in charge of everything. And they did not want to see anybody else get an opportunity. We had to pass an amendment for women to vote. We had to pass amendments for black people in our society to have equal access to the polls. 1970s, women couldn't even open a bank account. That's all conservatives holding that back. Again, no party affiliation. We're talking about ideologically, okay? All right. Post-war conservatism. This is when it starts to get really dicey. Cold War consensus. Conservatism was reshaped by anti-communism and support for free markets. So this is the McCarthy era, right? The Red Scare. Telling everybody if you oppose traditional American values, whatever the fuck they are, that you're a communist. That you're on a watch list, okay? That you're identified as a threat, that you're radical. Does that sound familiar? Right? If you oppose the government, if you speak out against the government, you are labeled a threat to the government, even though we have this little thing called freedom of speech, where the government is not supposed to suppress what we say and do. Okay. Southern realignment. This is the part that conservatives, Republicans in particular this day, don't want to discuss, okay? After the civil rights movement, many white Southern voters shifted from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party, solidifying a conservative base. This is where, in my opinion, this is where the split from or I should say, the true identification of liberal and conservative. So white Southern voters shifted from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party because they did not want black people to have the same rights. Let's call it what it is. It's much more complicated than that, but at the surface, that's what we're talking about here. Of course, it's much bigger than that, but that's at the core. So that's the Southern strategy, right? That's the break. That's the realignment. You can just look at the electoral maps. You can start to see the vote. And I'll remind people, okay? People want to say, oh, the Democrats started the KKK. Yes, Southern Dixiecrats, Southern Democrats, okay? Now, who flies the Confederate flag? Where do the hate groups, what political party and ideology do they support now? Various hate groups, whether it be the 3%ers or whatever they are, the 1%ers, the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, we know. Okay, Southern realignment, civil rights movement. Many white Southern voters shifted from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party, solidifying a conservative base. Barry Goldwater, 1964. His presidential run represented a bold conservative challenge to the liberal consensus, but failed electorally. He was flat out racist and attempted to hold on to whatever it was that he could in regards to keeping conservatives in power. And then Ronald Reagan's rise. In 1980, Reagan's election symbolized the mainstreaming of modern conservatism, combining free market economics, a strong military, and social traditionalism. I like that word or that phrase, social traditionalism. What is that? You could ask people on various sides of the political spectrum as to what that means. Like social traditionalism to me means in today's body politic, Christian nationalism, keeping things the same way. We prefer our nation of YT people. We prefer a nation of YT people in power. We don't want any marginalized group. We don't care what it is. We don't want any marginalized group having any level of power. Yeah, racial order. Exactly. Good way to put it, Tom. Exactly. We don't want anyone other than ourselves to have power. So Ronald Reagan was the tool to reshape modern conservatism. Don't forget, this was around the time of Roe v. Wade becoming the law of the land. So the Christian nationalists needed to identify a target. They couldn't come out and say, hey, listen, we're YT supremacists, so let's run on that. Instead, they decided to say, let's run on family values. Let's run on saying that we believe that we're pro-life. And the radical leftists, the liberals, believe that it's okay to just use AB as birth control. So that started the shift. That's kind of the launch of the Heritage Foundation and all these far right political entities that were influencing body politics, right? All these kinds of, all this kind of maneuvering to get somebody like Ronald Reagan elected so that he could be the voice of modern conservatism. So the regression of our society when it comes to social liberties and protections for marginalized was really ramped up then. At the same time, economically is when we started to see a real, again, we talk about post-World War II, that time during the boom of the middle class, the 60s, 70s, 60s and 70s, 50s, 60s and 70s for the most part, when the top marginalized tax rate was 90%, corporate tax rates were high, 50, 55, 60%, right? We were building out social protections, but we were also building out our society. Suburbs were being built, interstate highways were being expanded, the grid was being expanded, our society was growing. Now, I know that civil rights protections aside, economically, we were booming as a society. Arguably, though, at the expense of marginalized communities. We know that, okay? I'm just trying to draw the comparisons between what we had politically and socially at that time. Reagan comes along. The people that helped get him elected say, okay, we put you in power. You need to cut the corporate tax rate. And that's when it started. Trickle-down economics. And this is where we are now, okay? So we use Ronald Reagan, the right uses Ronald Reagan as this pillar, right? As this, he's the example of modern conservatism. Okay, you can certainly say that, and then you get it. So let's get into the modern conservatism. Reagan era. Reagan reshaped conservatism into a dominant force, emphasizing tax cuts, deregulation, a robust military, and family values. We are seeing it again. We saw the same thing with Reagan, 12 years of Reaganomics with Reagan and Bush Sr., W. Bush, Trump. It's the same script. It is the same script. They are following it. They will use the example of family values. Like, what the fuck is that? Like, we have this conversation oftentimes about how some people believe, the faux Christians amongst us, that their morality is defined by their faith. Okay, if that's your argument, then you're cheering for the big, beautiful bill taking food out of the mouths of children. So it becomes this convoluted message that they think they're voting for something specific as it relates to family values because they've been told through the right-wing echo chamber, right? We're going to talk about the fairness doctrine in just a second because that's where it started. They've been told that if you don't support the Republican conservative movement, then you are anti-family, right? So again, it's tax cuts, a dominant military force, deregulation, and family values. Don't tell me what your values are. Show me your budget. The big, beautiful bill, what does it do? The big, beautiful bill, tax cuts for the rich, expansion of funding for Homeland Security and the military, deregulation so that the rich can get richer, and we're gonna kick trans kids out of women's sports. It's the blueprint. This has been the conservative blueprint for decades. It's not new. That's why we always talk about Trumpism is not new. The radicalization of the body politic because of MAGA, that's something that's a little bit different. But at the base, these are traditional modern conservative values that they want to tell you are about family first. Friends, they're not. We know they're not. That's why we can't let this become the story. You know, we cannot relent on the truth when it comes to these kinds of things. We talk about this in terms of political ideology, and liberals get a bad rap because liberals have allowed liberals to get a bad rap. Instead of standing up saying, okay, I'm bad because I believe in open-minded approach to others, because I believe that women's rights to their body should be protected, because I believe that marginalized communities have had their foot on their neck for decades, that I believe in expansion of the middle class, that I believe in a woman's rights to her body, that I believe love is love, that I believe universal health care is a human right, that I believe food, children being able to eat should be a priority. That's radical. Then I'll wear that liberal. I will get a fucking liberal tattoo across my face and across my chest. Right? That's what the conservative messaging has done to our society. And the left, because there's not been an organized, unified, aggressive response to it, has let it happen. And that's where the fight is, in my opinion. Okay. Reagan reshaped conservatism into a dominant force, emphasizing tax cuts, deregulation, and robust military and family values. Post-Cold War, the collapse of the Soviet Union in the 1990s led to debates about conservatism's direction: global intervention versus isolationism, neoconservatism versus paleoconservatism. So think about, again, global intervention versus isolationism. We know what happened post-depression with isolationism, America First politics. We know what happened. We have history. Mark Twain said it famously. History doesn't repeat, but it sure does rhyme. Okay? So we know that. We have our history. Everybody, please keep tapping. If you wouldn't mind contributing to the gifting goal, please consider subscribing. You want to support the channel, you can do so right there. And if you haven't yet, please join our team today. Tap, tap, tap like crazy. Thank you, friends. So the conservative movement had a decision to make, right? Like, we are going to, do we double down? Do we double down on the fact that we are this America First isolationist? Meanwhile, the world is growing. Global trade is not yet really happened, but we're at the forefront that there needs to be some more globalization. They kind of resisted it for a populist movement. They decided that, we gotta do it here. We're gonna make America great. We're gonna maintain our supremacy in the world at the expense of the middle class, at the expense of the poor, at the expense of women, minorities, marginalized groups, so that the power can be, corporate power can be, we can gravitate our wealth to the top and keep it there. The Reaganomics, right? So that's where that split was, and they decided that we're gonna keep it the way it is. We're gonna conserve things as best we can. The world was changing, with the exception of American conservatives. They weren't. Trump era. The Tea Party movement, 2009, okay? A grassroots reaction to perceived government overreach during Obama's presidency, focusing on fiscal conservatism and constitutionalism. So there's holdovers from the Tea Party, right? And a lot of people might think, and I don't necessarily agree, although somewhat. A lot of people say that the Tea Party was the match that lit Trumpism. I think a black man as president is really what did it, but different conversation. So again, their focus was on fiscal conservatism and constitutionalism, right? So fiscal conservatism for them meant tax cuts for the rich, suppression of the minority vote, marginalized communities, assaults on education, assaults on human rights, unwilling to expand civil liberties. So that's, again, their idea of fiscal conservatism, holding on to what we have, not wanting women or minorities to have any voice. Nuclear family, traditional family values. That's kind of where that whole evolution started. Again, tracking, though, going back to Civil War era, going back to Reconstruction, during Jim Crow, it's the same kind of elements. They just kind of, they didn't expand their circle. They just decided that they need to bring more people in and keep things the way that they are, as opposed to addressing the fact that society was changing around them. Trump era, 2016 till now. Trump reshaped conservatism with a populist, nationalist, and sometimes nativist tone, breaking with traditional conservative norms on trade, foreign policy, and decorum. And that's the weird part about Trumpism. He's not a conservative. People like to compare him to Reagan. He's not a conservative. He's social. He's certainly not fiscally conservative. There's no way you could label him a fiscal conservative. He's certainly not socially liberal. So what is he? So conservatism now, in my opinion, doesn't exist. It's Trumpism and liberalism. I don't think conservatism exists in the American psyche anymore. But conservatives are the problem because conservatives, by and large, vote for Trump. Grifter, sure. Pancake, twice impeached, 4-time indicted, sexually abusing father, convicted felon. Yeah, it's all him. And then post-Trump, okay? The movement remains divided between traditional conservatives, populists, and libertarians debating issues like globalization, immigration, and cultural identity. The fact that any libertarian would ever vote for Trump is staggering to me. Think about what libertarians want. Get the fuck out of my business. I don't want anything. I don't want the government telling me what to do. I don't want the government in my business. And yet so many of them seem to vote for Trump. Again, power of messaging. Okay, I want to take a little bit of a break from that. And we're going to talk about the fairness doctrine. For those of you who don't know, the fairness doctrine is kind of what led to the rise of Fox News and other places like that. So I found this great sound from this creator, Now This Impact. I'll just play this for you, then we can talk about it. Everybody keep tapping.
Fracturing and polarization of our media can be traced back to, you guessed it, Ronald Reagan. In 1949, the FCC required licensed broadcasters to air competing perspectives on controversial issues. It was called the Fairness Doctrine. Conservatives never liked the rule. They believed objectivity privileged the Democratic Party, which sounds like an admission. So in 1987, Ronald Reagan repealed it, arguing it infringed on First Amendment rights, despite the Supreme Court ruling it didn't. Almost immediately after he lifted the rule, the number of explicitly conservative and fascist media programs skyrocketed, driven by talk radio hosts like Rush Limbaugh and Bob Grant. Grant spewed racist and xenophobic rage, calling black people screaming savages and saying the U.S. was being flooded by millions of subhumanoids. Limbaugh followed in his footsteps, growing his audience to tens of millions with inflammatory rants calling women and feminists, degrading black people, and just being plain hateful.
If we are going to pay for your contraceptives and thus pay for you to have, we want something for you. We want you to post the videos online so we can all watch.
That generation of radio personalities provided the foundation for outlets like Newsmax and Fox News. Bill O'Reilly, the former Fox News host known for his racist and sexist rants, said in 1993, "I'm not sure where the business is going, but my gut says it's going in the direction of Rush, and man, I'm going to be there." In 1996, Rupert Murdoch launched Fox News, which unapologetically embraced the conservative nationalistic slant on TV after seeing the success of releasing pent-up anger on talk radio. Liberals never replicated in scale or scope what Fox News and Limbaugh did, and they didn't form a loyal alliance with the Democratic Party like conservative broadcasters did with the GOP. It'd be pretty hard to revive the fairness doctrine, but the fracturing and polarization of our media can be traced right back to Reagan, like most of our other problems.
How often do we say it, friends, right? So think about what she just talked about there at the end, right? So conservatism was feeling like society was changing so fast. So, Mr. Reagan, there's this thing called the fairness doctrine, which is by design liberal, so that everybody can express their opinions. Well, we don't think that's a very good thing. So can you repeal that? And if you do that, then we don't have to be a news agency. Then we can do whatever the fuck we want. Conservatives, modern day conservatives, Republicans used the overturn of the fairness doctrine to create the right-wing echo chambers that we have now. So their message just needed a spark, and that was it. Right now they have dominated the airwaves because legacy media is conservative. Let's be real. The right likes to always say, "Oh, left liberal media." No, media is conservative. Okay, it always has been. You can have biases. We talk about that a lot, but think about it, that's where we are, right? So everything we've talked about up until now, it just needed a megaphone. It just needed a megaphone. Do I even have that sound? Hold on, I have this.
Attention, conservatives. Pay attention to Fox News. We will support all your hatred, all your denial, all of your conspiracy theories. Thank you, Ronald Reagan. Have a good day.
It's kind of what it seemed like, right? They just needed an outlet, and it was Rush Limbaugh and others who created that space where you could say whatever you want, where you could demoralize anyone, where you could diminish anybody under the protections of freedom of the press and freedom of speech and under the guise that we are pushing back on the liberal communist takeover of America. And it continues today. This is why I talk often about media literacy, right? And understanding it's not just whether or not someone's lying to you, it's the intent. Okay? So I've got a little bit more sound on that topic to play from Sean Hannity because I think it speaks very well. He talked, I'm not sure if he even realizes what he was talking about here, but I think it makes a lot of sense because this speaks to exactly what we were talking about this morning. So I'm going to play this for you. And it's a little bit long, but I think it's worth it because it's exactly what we're talking about here. Okay.
Cannot trust fake news, CNN, MSDNC. You can't trust the broadcast channels, ABC, CBS, NBC. Stop reading the New York Times. Stop reading the Washington Post. Stop listening to NPR. And frankly, you can get your news right here on this show, on Fox News, talk radio, maybe podcasters that you like, know, and trust. You might not always agree with my political beliefs, but we're not going to spend 5 years lying to your face. None of these people are, quote, journalists, as they claim. They are leftist, activist, talk show hosts that are merely part of the Democratic machine. Frankly, nothing more than an extension of their press offices. They're not honest about who they are. As it turns out, their rampant dishonesty extends to almost everything. I don't have time to list every lie. They have done nothing but lie and lie again and again and peddle one conspiracy theory about Donald Trump after another. Wow. They pretend to be honest, purveyors of truth, and that is a lie. But of course, it's not just the media.
Okay, so you heard that. Just as a reminder, Sean Hannity on Truth and the Media. Okay. Fox News paid $787.5 million in a defamation settlement. Hannity admitted under oath that he promoted stories about the 2020 election that weren't true. Sean Hannity, because things like the fairness doctrine were overturned, because Rupert Murdoch decided that he was going to be a freedom fighter in journalism, is allowed to go and tell people what you just heard. There is no liberal response to that. There's none. It's not a question of having journalistic integrity. It's just flat out dishonesty and deceit. It's just, somebody said, I'll play it again. Sure, it's not that long. Somebody said they wanted to hear it again.
You cannot trust fake news, CNN, MSDNC. You can't trust the broadcast channels, ABC, CBS, NBC. Stop reading the New York Times. Stop reading the Washington Post. Stop listening to NPR. And frankly, you can get your news right here on this show, on Fox News, talk radio, maybe podcasters that you like, know, and trust. You might not always agree with my political beliefs, but we're not going to spend 5 years lying to your face. None of these people are, quote, journalists, as they claim. They are leftist, activist, talk show hosts that are merely part of the Democratic machine. Frankly, nothing more than an extension of their press offices. They're not honest about who they are. As it turns out, their rampant dishonesty extends to almost everything. I don't have time to list every lie. They have done nothing but lie and lie again and again and peddle one conspiracy theory about Donald Trump after another. They pretend to be honest, purveyors of truth, and that is a lie. But of course, it's not just the media.
So, obviously, because you guys are the smartest chat on TikTok, we know what they're saying there. So he starts off by identifying a few news agencies. By the way, some of those, ABC, CBS, NBC, every one of those, and the New York Times, every one of those news publications has been identified by the Trump administration as being threats to democracy. It's a concerted effort. Friends, we can't deny the fact that the right is extremely good at this. They are extremely good at this. Felice and I have talked about this before from a messaging perspective. It's a brilliant strategy. They've played the long game. They decided a long time ago that we have to sell the American public, those people that still believe in patriotism, that honesty and integrity are anti-American. So they frame it that way. ABC, CBS, NBC, the New York Times, the Atlantic, journalism, they're all lying to you. Don't trust them. Trust us. Everything is a conspiracy. Everything is weaponization of government. Everything is lawfare. The only people that you can believe are me, or are us. Conservatives are the problem because they have been conditioned to believe the things that Sean Hannity just told them. They are conditioned to believe that when a news agency reports on the fact that it wasn't a gift of a $400 million jet was not offered to President Trump, he went out and sought it. They won't tell you that. They won't tell you that tens of millions of people are going to be kicked off of Medicaid because of the big bill, bold, beautiful bill. Instead, they will say, that's fake news. We're only kicking off illegals or people taking advantage of it. They talk about in terms of all the obvious criminality and corruption at the hands of the Trump administration is fake news. It's made up. Conservatives are the problem. And Fox News and News Nation, they know their voters are less inclined to look past the headlines than people who want the truth. I said it yesterday. It's not about me being right. That's not what it's about. I want the truth. The truth is conservatives are the problem. Conservatives, Democrats, conservative Republicans, it doesn't matter. Conservatives are holding us back. I'm going to bring up Eve. I will use this opportunity to take a quick break. I'll be right back. Thank you, friend.
Absolutely. Good morning. Y'all know that I'm here to remind everyone to please support our fabulous hostess with the mostest. He's our desirable, dapper dreamboat, decimating deplorable diatribes with dignity and decorum. And he's here every day with that fiery feral fist for freedom, bringing you facts over feelings because facts still matter. And they always will. So if you have the means, let's help Fax meet his gift goal and sub waves. You can show support directly with the pay apps in the link tree of his bio, as well as the Fax HQ and Discord link. You can reach the HQ via FactsStillMatter.site, and you can check out all the new merch. We have a summer fun merch raffle coming up for the month of June. All of the active subscribers on both TikTok and the Fax HQ will be entered in the raffle for a free t-shirt or coffee mug of your choice from the Fax merch store. All you need is to be subscribed in either location, but check and make sure your subscriptions are active because you don't want to miss out on your chance to win. If you're just looking for that fun free forum for the Fax family to frolic, link in the bio doesn't work, try to copy and paste it into a browser or Google, and if that still doesn't work, reach out to a moderator and we'll hook you up. When you join, please open a ticket. There's a couple quick questions. If you need assistance with that, you can ask in the unverified lobby and we'll walk you through it. Now, if you haven't already, please click that follow or heart me up at the top of the screen next to Fax's name. You can join the team for the cost of a penny. You can do this every day, and it helps to keep us relevant and on the FYP. The main thing that we ask of y'all is to interact in the comments as well as tapping your little hearts out. It's always free to tap and share out the live. If you don't have any friends, just click the copy link. It works the same as a share, and no one will be the wiser. After this live stream, head on over to YouTube and subscribe to Facts Still Matter there as well. You can rewatch shows for any information you missed. And subscriptions on YouTube are free, just like following your favorite creators here on TikTok. Lastly, be kind, smile at a stranger, and have a fuck your feelings kind of day.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you very, very much for being here. Have a good day, okay?
You too. Whee!
I think Eve needs to have her own show. It's called, Alliterations with Eve. I mean, that seems like backed by popular demand. Okay, so here's the thing, and the reason that this is important, the reason I speak about it in terms of conservatives, is because they have a mouthpiece, which is Fox News, News Nation. So they've conditioned the American people to say that everything, judges' decisions, people calling out corruption when they see it, following the Constitution when, district court, federal court, appellate courts rule against the president because of his policies, that becomes anti-American because as a result of the evolution of conservatism through the Tea Party into Trumpism, the overturning of the fairness doctrine, it's become status quo. So when left-leaning or when just good journalism calls out the details of the big, bold, beautiful bill, knowing full well, first of all, that undocumented immigrants are not eligible for Medicaid. The argument is that there's 1.4 million people on it. The only access they get is for emergency care. There are 14 states that do authorize some elements of Medicaid for children and for pregnant women. Don't tell me what your values are. Show me your budget. So conservatives, the party of family values, just wants to use that as an argument to cut 10% of funding. So when we report on the facts, when the data is in the bill, because there are no mouthpieces on the left like there are on the right, whether it be through legacy media or through social media, people like Elon, people like Charlie Kirk, et cetera, with absolutely no mitigation or fact checking, this is where we have. Case in point, okay? This was a post from the twice impeached, 4-time indicted, sexually abusing fraudster convicted felon. All right. Hold on.
So many false statements are being made about the one big beautiful bill, in all caps. But nobody understands is that it's the single biggest spending cut in history by far. But there will be, in all caps, no cuts to Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. In fact, they will be saved from the incompetence of the Democrats. The Democrats, who have totally lost their confidence and their way, are saying whatever comes to mind, anything to win. They suffer the greatest humiliation in the history of politics, and they're desperate to get back on their game, but they won't be able to because their policies are so bad. In fact, they would lead to the destruction of our country, and almost did. The only cutting we will do is for waste, fraud, and abuse. Something that should have been done by the incompetent radical left Democrats of the last 4 years, but wasn't.
Does that not speak to exactly what we were just talking about? We know because the math tells us that the Commerce, I think it's the Commerce Commission or the Commerce Committee, 10% is the cut, is the line item, 10% cut in Medicaid. And less than 1% goes to support undocumented immigrants when they get medical care in ERs and ER only. And 14 states authorize care under Medicaid for children and pregnant women. And the president is going out on Truth Social, and it will be echoed on Newsmax and on News Nation and on Fox News that there are no cuts. And the Republicans who passed the bill are telling you that they're only cutting undocumented. We're kicking off the people who are abusing the system. So even they are having a hard time, consolidating their message. But it's kind of energy and commerce. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. So energy and commerce. So they've been mandated to cut 10%. You cannot cut 10% from that budget. You can't. You cannot cut 10% from that department's, that agency and that committee's budget without cutting Medicaid. And it's not 1.4 million illegals undocumented, as they say. You can't do it. So it's, again, they're all lies. And because of the power and the intentional investment that they've made into conservative media, this is what happens. And then you have people like Sean Hannity going out there, don't believe ABC, don't believe CBS, don't believe The Atlantic, don't believe the New York Times, don't believe any of them. Trust in me. Remember the snake from the Jungle Book. Trust in me. We're the ones that are telling you the truth. And their followers are like, illegals, Medicaid, abortion in the 9th month. Seriously. I want people to understand that this is what we're talking about here now in the infiltration of this bullshit. You're right, afterbirth, exactly. This propaganda machine, because that's what it is no different than Russian state TV. It's no different at all. And you can't trust anybody. This is Lugenpresse from Yahtzee, Germany. This is Russian TV. This is RT Media, which used to be what was the name of the, I forget. Anyway, but it's the same tool. It is the same tool because they know that their policies are not popular. So what do? They change the rules in the House so that they can attempt to pass it through budget reconciliation, right? Because they know that they can't even get enough members of their own party to support it. So they got to change the rules to make it work. And they're going to tell everybody, their voters, and they're going to use the tools that they have, that they've invested in, that they foster, that they nurture like a little puppy, to say, well, listen, voters, the radical left media, they're woke, they're lying to you. CNN, they're lying to you. And meanwhile, they're the ones that are lying. It's kind of where we are, friends, right? Everybody, please keep tapping and sharing. I appreciate it. I can't even see how many people are in here. What's the number? I can't even see it. It's hidden. Anyway, I appreciate you guys. I'm going to take a real quick detour one more time to ask you guys if you can do this for me. In the link tree that's in my bio, the first link you'll see will be the link to Beats for Good. This is a long story short. There is a massive concert coming up in July in the state of Vermont, and they've added this program a few years ago called Beats for Good. If you go to the voting form, you can vote for a band called Punch. The reason I'm asking you to vote for Punch is because my daughter's in that band. There was 127 applicants, and the top 10 were chosen. And the Fray and the Plain White Tees were on the judging committee. Thank you. So her band got chosen amongst the finalists. And at this point, it's literally only the band that receives the most votes. You can vote every day. You can vote more than once a day with a different email address. Like, I'm not suggesting you do that, but that would be a great thing. But I'm not suggesting you do that. So again, that link tree is in my bio. I appreciate you all very, very much. And happy Pride. Okay, where was I? All right, I want to get back to what we were discussing. So we've sort of left off with post-Trump as far as modern conservatives. Now we can talk about key themes across history, and these things have perpetuated, right? And so a lot of it has remained the same. It's just kind of called something differently. So limited government, right? Conservatism traditionally supports limiting government power and preserving individual liberties. Now all this is messaging. So what we're going to go through now is messaging. Because under every Republican administration since Reagan, they have spent like it's monopoly money. They're the ones that have expanded government by attempting to take away the rights of people. So when I think limited government, I think more like a libertarian would. Like, get the fuck out of my business. Like, I'll pay my taxes. I get it. I understand what taxes are important, but I don't want the government telling me what to do, especially with my body. But that's what modern conservatism has been able to do by using Fox News, by using social spaces, by using the echo chambers to say, well, all the left wants to do is get in people's business while the right is getting in their business. So the myth and the lie of limited government. Free markets, a belief in capitalism and opposition to excessive regulation. Okay, so let's unpack that a second, right? We know that in capitalism, money has to circulate. It's not. I did this discussion with you guys a while back. Currently, estimates are there's roughly $164 trillion worth of wealth in our nation, combined. Assets, whatever that might be. 134 trillion of that is in the top 25%. The rest is the rest of us. That exponential growth has been amplified since the 1980s. what was significant about the 80s? Reduction in corporate tax cuts, reduction in corporate tax rates. Capitalism is the problem, and conservatives are using it as a tool, right? To enrich themselves and to claim that the government is too big. So we've got to make sure that we are giving corporations the money to reinvest, and they never do. Excessive regulations, right? So they claim that there are too many regulations, which limits the capitalism. Sadly, deregulating the banking industry, for example, or financial services in general, has led to the most modern recessions. Right? We know that. So again, the lie. Cultural traditionalism. It's a good one. Support for established social norms, religious values, and community structures. What the fuck does that mean? Support for established social norms. In the conservatives' mind, that's the nuclear family. In the conservative minds, that's two genders. In the conservative minds, that is, you keep your sex life and your gender ideology to yourself. You keep your wokeness to yourself. That would be a social norm from a conservative, right? Conservatives are the problem. Society's progressing. I want people to love who the fuck they want. I don't care. I want people to be happy. I want people to be recognized. I want people to be propped up. I want diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility. That's what I want. Conservatives don't want that because they can connect it to their religious values. That's the Christian nationalism. So think about conservatism again, who it attracts, who it draws in. It attracts Christian fundamentalists for the most part. It attracts the Christian nationalist amongst our society because they feel safe there. They feel like conservatism is America first. Conservatism is YTism, if that is such a thing. Conservatism is one man, one woman. Meanwhile, we know that the crimes against children and women that they're perpetuating. So that's their traditional religious values. And then community structures. Community structure. I see a community structure where the richest nation on earth can guarantee that children can fucking eat, or that there is access to healthcare, or that there is access to clean air and clean water. That's a community structure that I would support. The question we have to ask conservatives is, why the hell aren't you? Why aren't you supporting that? Why aren't you supporting education? Oh, I get it, because you've been told that smart people are a threat. Yeah, smart people are a threat because we can see through your bullshit. So you could ask a conservative what they think is community structure. Find out what they say. I'd be curious. Again, a key theme across conservative history: strong national defense, especially prominent during Cold War and post 9/11 periods. It's obviously we're still in the Cold War, by the way. We just fight it a different way. So here we are, right? You think Cold War, who was the enemy, friends? Show the world that you're the smartest chat. Who was the enemy during the Cold War? You guys know. Who's going to answer the question? You guys know who the enemy was during the Cold War. We know, right? Russia, exactly. So Russia is the enemy during the Cold War, the Soviet Union technically, but yeah, okay. So they're the enemy during the Cold War. So let's think about that, right? The 80s, as we've gone through our exercise today, the 80s, the removal of the fairness doctrine, the rise of right-wing media, an opportunity to level set, an opportunity for Christian nationalists to kind of take back the reins a bit. And all of a sudden, because of messaging and because of the fact that they want to try to hide their hatred for marginalized communities, they want to come out and say that, is Russia really that bad? Again, like I said earlier, like we played the sound from that amazing drone strike that took out 1/3 of the Russian bomber fleet, like 40 bombers. There's video. I reposted one. You can find it on my page. It's crazy. Where's the communication from the White House? Why have they said nothing? Why have they said nothing? Like, when did Russia become the ally, so to speak. Could you draw a line to 2016? Maybe. Leverage? Maybe. Okay. And then skepticism of rapid change, a wariness of utopian or radical reforms. Is it utopia to have healthcare? Is it utopia to guarantee that children can eat? Oh, let me say that again. Is it utopia for children to eat? Are we asking a lot? Why does that even have to be liberal or progressive? Are we asking a lot as citizens of the United States to say, you know what? I want to make sure that every kid in our country, from Maine to Alaska, can eat, no matter what the circumstance, no matter what your family dynamic is, no matter where you live, no matter the color of your skin, no matter your disability or not. I want to make sure that every kid can eat. That is considered radical in today's body politic. Think about that, okay? All right. We talked about this, just to recap. 1600s to 1700s, colonial conservatism. 1780s, 1830s, Federalists favor a strong central government. Jeffersonian Republicans preserve agrarian and traditional social structures. You're starting to see the break. 1830s to 1860s, Whigs advocate for moral and moral order and modernization. 1870s to 1900s, Reconstruction fuels Southern conservative backlash. Rise of business-friendly, laissez-faire economic policies. 1920s, return to normalcy under Harding and Coolidge emphasizes business isolationism and minimal government. 30s to 40s, resistance to the New Deal reforms by business leaders and classical liberals. Rise of the American Liberty League. 50s and 60s, fusionism, emergence under Buckley, combining traditionalism, free markets, and anti-communism. Again, rhetoric fueled by conservatism. 1980s, Reagan. Enough said. 1990s to 2000s, post-Cold War conservatism grapples with globalization. Neoconservatives promote interventionism, especially after 9/11, and then the 2010s and the 2020s. So it's like this has been the long game. Like we've talked about before about Mitch McConnell in the Senate. It's not just Mitch. It's the long game played by the conservatives. It's the long game about stacking the court, knowing that eventually, if we can chip away at these things, as the left is looking to expand rights for people, as the radical left wants to promote social justice, the radical left wants to talk about healthcare, we're going to stack the courts. We're going to make it impossible. We're going to use rhetoric. We're going to use Sean Hannity and Fox News and Newsmax and social spaces. And then the golden goose, Donald Trump, shows up, a charlatan. I'm going to lie to my people. I'll give you guys what you want. You're going to enrich me? Cool. Sounds great. Where do I sign? All right. Let's do a little breakdown of some key figures in this conservative movement leads up to Trump. Alexander Hamilton, early Federalist promoting strong government and economic elitism. He was an elite. Let's not lie about that. He was an elite. John C. Calhoun. These are names you might want to remember. Defender of Southern conservatism and slavery. William F. Buckley Jr., intellectual founder of modern conservatism, championing fusionism. Barry Goldwater, 1964 GOP nominee, proponent of limited government and anti-communism, right? Ronald Reagan, icon of modern conservatism, combined free markets, patriotism, and social conservatism. Newt Gingrich, Tea Party, architect of 1994's Contract with America, emphasizing government reform and fiscal restraint. Conservatives. Donald Trump, not a conservative. Modern populist conservative, reshaping the GOP around nationalism, trade protectionism, and cultural issues. To say the least. So I'm going to do a little breakdown for you when it comes to sort of comparing conservatism and liberalism. And then you guys can just ask yourself where you fall on the list and where we should be as a nation. Okay, government role. Conservatives believe, doesn't mean they act on it. Conservatives believe in limited and or small government. Liberals say active government role, supportive of regulations and social welfare. Okay? Economic policy. Conservatism is free markets, low taxes, deregulation. Liberals, regulation, progressive taxation, social safety nets. Okay? Social issues. Conservatives believe in traditional values, family, and religion. Liberals say progressive on civil rights, gender, race, LGBTQ plus rights. Okay? Like, is there really a debate? But frankly, I mean, I get it. If you're hung up your beliefs, again, conservatives are the problem, right? Holding society back. Foreign policy. Strong defense, initially isolationist, later interventionists. The war machine. Liberals, diplomacy, multilateralism, human rights advocacy. And then view of change. This is the big one. Conservatives are cautious. They prefer gradual change and then skeptical of utopianism, even though there is none. And then liberals embrace reform, optimistic about government's role in addressing inequality and injustice. Wokeness. Right? Like, it's frustrating to me, somebody who's studied this kind of stuff, and I consider myself smart and I pay attention to these kinds of things. It's the message that this list is what conservatism is supposed to be, right? Supposedly. It's not what it is. Are modern conservatives under Trump, do they believe in limited and small government? Nope. Do they believe in free markets, low taxes, and deregulation? Yeah, but to the benefit of corporate elite. Do they believe social issues? They believe in traditional do they believe in traditional values, family, and religion? Yes, but who are the majority of people that perpetrate crimes against women and children? Conservatives and or faith leaders. Strong defense, initially isolationist, later interventionist. You could probably agree with that one, right? And then view of change, cautious, prefer gradual change, skeptical of utopianism. I will challenge the prefer gradual change. They want full stop. They want to put the brakes on progress. So they're afraid of diversity, equity, inclusion. They're accessibility. They're afraid of all those things. So I wouldn't say that they prefer gradual change. They just want the whole fucking thing to stop. Right? And again, the other side, liberals, government's role to be active, to supportive of regulation and social welfare. Is there anybody that would disagree with that? Like, I don't look to the government to solve all my problems, but I want government's role to be active. Remember, government has to step in because the private sector fails, right? You could easily have a commitment by C-suiters to offer. Anyway, economic policy. Liberals favor regulation, progressive taxation, and social safety nets. Social issues, progress on civil rights. Foreign policy, diplomacy first. Multilateralism, allies, partners, supporting NATO, things like that. Human rights advocacy. Okay? And then embracing reform in regards to view of change, embracing reform, optimistic about government's role in addressing inequality and injustice. So, again, this is not I don't want you to leave here today with this thinking that it's Republicans versus Democrats in this conversation, because it's not. It's conservatives versus progressives. They classify this as liberalism. That's fine, but those are progressive tendencies, right? I want to move the needle forward. I want society to progress. And the people who don't want it to progress, let's call it what it is. People who are afraid of progress are primarily racist bigots, because what they realize, what they've been told, is if they get more rights, then black people will get more rights, or that trans people will get more rights, or that women will get more rights, because there's no argument against expanding rights. Never have we ever lived through an era where rights are being taken away from people. Never. And I hope we never live through it again. But we are literally here now where a political movement in our country is attempting to take away rights of people. And because of Fox News and because of things like that, when people say, your rights aren't being taken away, just give them back to the states' rights, brother. No, they're being taken away. Even in that argument, it was taken away, women's rights to their body, taken away federally and given to the states, even though that's not the case. I won't get on that road. That's an example. They won't ever admit that because that does not fit the narrative. Because they see themselves as patriotic. They see themselves, because they were told to think this way, they see themselves as freedom fighters, true patriots. Right? All right. Hope you guys are enjoying this. If you'd like to support the channel, there's a few ways to do so. You know you can do that through the various pay apps that are right here. Please consider subscribing. Don't forget about gifting. Let's get this done. I think these conversations are important. You guys know me. I love this kind of shit because it just doesn't get discussed in the way that we're talking about it. I want people to understand something, right? This is about the kind of country that you want. End of the day, right? This is really about the kind of society that you want to live in. We can have 50 individual fiefdoms if we want, but we are the United States of America, meaning that the liberties and freedoms that we enjoy, we should all enjoy. That's why I say that people on the left, liberals, progressives, we care more about conservative kids than they do. We care more about their communities than they do. We care more about their financial futures than they do. We care more about their jobs and their health than they do. Conservatives vote for themselves. Liberals, progressives vote for the greater good. It's the me versus the we. Right? So this is a call to liberals, to progressives. Stop being apathetic. Stop running everything through your purity test. And understand what's at stake. If you care about the things that we're discussing this morning, if you care about investments in public education, if you care about investments in civil rights and human rights, if you care about education and healthcare, then you're going to have to ask yourself some questions. That person did not say exactly what I wanted them to say. Because there's so many people out there on the left that are just like, I wish they had said more, or I wish Kamala Harris had said a little bit more about this. Sure, that's fucking politics. Get over it. Get off your entitled bullshit chair and understand what's at stake. What we just went through, this exercise in conservatism, it's only going to grow. It's only going to get worse. It's only going to get deeper. It's only going to be influenced more by Christian nationalists unless you do something about it. Unless you do something about it. I don't give a shit what it's going to take. I do not care. Swallow hard, cover your eyes. I don't fucking care. Vote for progressives. If you want any hope of a society that you claim to care about. All right. Modern factions of conservatism. Traditional conservatives value moral order, family, religion, and community, and they're skeptical of cultural change. I think we just went through that. Libertarians advocate for minimal government, individual liberty, and free markets, they often clash with social conservatives over personal freedoms. This is a weird one to me. Like I said this earlier, I don't understand how any libertarian would ever vote for Trump or today's GOP. Ever. It makes no sense. So libertarians are losing their cred. Rand Paul is as close as we can get to a prominent libertarian voice in Congress, right? He is, I'll give him credit. He's pretty consistent. He says some weird things about Trump every once in a while, but he's like, I'm not going to support this. The government getting bigger? I'm not going to support this. I'm not going to expand. I'm not going to vote to expand or to raise the debt ceiling. I'm not going to vote to cut this and not cut that. Like, that would be an example. Like, I don't understand how any libertarian, and I live next to a state full of them, state we don't talk about. Remember, build a bridge over to New Hampshire, go to Vermont to Maine. I don't get that. That makes no sense. Somebody explain that to me. How the fuck a libertarian, is it gun rights? Okay, whatever. Neoconservatives, former liberals emphasizing democracy promotion abroad, support military interventions, right? So a lot of members of the Democratic Party voted for the Iraq War, right? It's a weird one because that becomes this patriotic exercise. Our country's attacked and you got to respond. So that's I don't necessarily agree with that particular label, but paleoconservatives, they focus on nationalism, isolationism, and then skepticism of immigration. So I think there are more people that are paleoconservatives in our body politic today than perhaps your neos, but that can be debated. And then often critical of globalism and elite institutions. Yet they support globalism and elite institutions in a strange, convoluted kind of way. And then populist and or nationalist conservatives, the Trump era, emphasize economic nationalism, make America great again, America first, anti-immigration policies, enough said there, and then skepticism of institutions. Every institution, not just what we think of institutions, not just educational institutions, political institutions, journalistic institutions, whatever that might be, the system. By the way, those systems designed to ensure rights for others, designed to protect all Americans. Yeah, except institutions, good call. They support that institution, churches. Right? So that's what these systems, these institutions, the democratic institutions, small d, right? To guarantee that the Constitution is upheld, that people's civil liberties and rights aren't taken away at a whim just because of a true social post, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then appeal to the working class voter and challenge establishment Republicans. That's how they describe it. Do Trumpism policies appeal to the working class voter? No, the rhetoric does. The rhetoric certainly does. No doubt about it. This goes back to the fairness doctrine. This connects the dots, right? You see what I'm talking about here? How the belief, and again, this is, if you're going to grade it, it's an A+ from a strategy perspective. We're going to tell our voters that if you believe in family values, working class, patriotism, civil liberties, freedom, etc., then you got to vote conservative. Meanwhile, all of those things, they are anti-freedom, they are anti-civil liberty, they are not about small government, they are about government intervention, they are about expanding corporate elitism, denying the middle class, etc., etc., etc. It is like the epitome of the big lie. It really is. Okay. Let's see, I covered that. I covered that. Okay, so we can make a little let's do a global comparison. Before I do that, let me just see. I've got a few more bits of sound to play for you guys. I want to make sure that we've got a lot more to cover today, but there's just so many things that I think it's necessary for us to talk about. So this is David Brooks. He's a famous conservative columnist, and he talks about, the impact of the corruption that is under the current Trump administration and the damage that they're. Remember, we talked about earlier about how they've used rhetoric like waste, fraud, and abuse. They've used that to tell their voters that, we're looking out for you. There is so much waste, fraud, and abuse in government that we're looking out for you, that we're the ones watching. They still use waste, fraud, and abuse to cutting Medicare and Medicaid. Again, the math ain't mathin', right? The math ain't mathin'. 10% cut required. They've only identified 1.4 million people being on Medicare that are undocumented, and those people only get to access it through emergency care. It's against the law. They can't be on it. And then, again, 14 states do offer some elements of Medicaid, which is for children and pregnant women. Okay? So that's part of it. And he references USAID here. This is staggering, and I want you to hear this. And again, this comes down to a simple truth. What kind of society do you support? What kind of world do you want to live in? Okay? This is, again, David Brooks.
Folks at Boston University count how many people have died because of what Doge did at USAID. And USAID was a very ill-managed organization. That's true. But according to the Boston University folks, so far 55,000 adults have died of AIDS in the 4 months since Trump was elected. 6,000 children are dead because of what Doge did. That's just PEPFAR, the HIV. You add them all up, that's 300,000 dead, and we're 4 months in. Now you accumulate that over 4 years, the number of dead grows very high. There are mass murderers in the world. Pol Pot, Mao Zedong, Stalin. We don't have anybody on the list for America. And I don't think it's the same as committing the kind of genocide they did. But by taking away that agency and being at least semi-responsible for the deaths of probably by the end of this hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, that's Elon Musk's legacy. And the people who work at Tesla and SpaceX, we want to think about that.
So think about what he said, right? So we've discussed this before, right? Again, conservatives want their voters to believe that they are identifying waste, fraud, and abuse, isolationism. Why are we spending money abroad? Why are we not investing in our own homeland, even though they don't do that? So they tell you that they're going to take the money from USAID because of waste, fraud, and abuse, and we're going to give it back to America. And where does the money go? Right to the top. Follow what, friends? Follow the fucking money. USAID, some of their programs were to provide contraception, condoms in particular, for communities ravaged by HIV in Africa. You heard the numbers. Thousands of people have lost their lives in those parts of the world because we stopped funding it. Soft power. We've discussed this in the past, right? Diplomatic soft power. An example of that would be when supplies show up in countries like Mozambique or parts of South Africa where they're being ravaged by HIV and other outbreaks of disease. When those supplies, those humanitarian supplies, show up wrapped in a big American flag, supported by the U.S. military, that buys deference when it comes to trade deals, et cetera, et cetera. Now that's gone. Who's moved in to fill the void? That would be China. That would be China. So American exceptionalism, you could make an investment, help save lives globally, and you say, no. Nope, we're not going to do it. Now, if you wanted to say, we can't do that because we are going to fund public education, then that would be something that I would be willing to have a conversation about. We can certainly do both. There's no doubt about it. We can do both. But no, never those conversations. Nope. Never those conversations. The conversations are only about waste, fraud, and abuse. And we know the promise from Elon Musk through the conservative echo chamber was $2 trillion in savings. The receipts show like 50 billion. That's about it. 50 billion. And he's out. Why? You can form your own opinions as to why. Doesn't matter to me. He's gone. All that noise, all that kerfuffle, but the damage has been done. The damage has been done. Again, we're talking about attacks on institutions. The damage is done. He's taken a big shit on the American system and then left the steaming pile. And then other people are going to have to pick out the corn, so to speak. That's gross. Sorry. Shouldn't have said that. Anywho, you get my point. Okay? So it's not just the example that David Brooks gave is just one example. There's thousands of examples globally about the investment in humanitarian relief. What kind of society do you want? Do you want to say, I support the richest country in the world providing resources to help save lives? 6,000 children, under guesstimates, in southern parts of Africa lost their lives that could have been prevented because of USAID investments. And Elon Musk said, nope. Donald Trump said, nope. Children and pregnant people denied access to health care because of waste, fraud, and abuse. But the party of pro-life, right? That's what they want. This is the conservative wet dream. Okay? They're spanking it in the corner so that they can propagate their whiteness and deny people of any marginalized group access to things like civil liberties and rights and humanity. It's true. For money. It's true. This is the damage. This is why Democrat conservatives are just as much to blame. They're just as much to blame. just because you have a Democrat that represents you, what the fuck are they voting for? I've said this to you guys before. I am tired of table scraps. I am so tired of liberals talking about expanding the ACA. I was really disappointed in Kamala Harris that she didn't come out and say, I am going to demand we pass legislation to guarantee health care for all. It was just about expansion to the ACA. I'm tired of it. I don't want little bites of the apple. I don't want it. What's the quote by Jefferson? Hold on a second. Yeah, here you go. When government fears the people, there is liberty. When people fear the government, there is tyranny. Right? When government fears the people, there is liberty. My mods, because they're the best mods on TikTok, found this great Ukraine has said it struck the bridge connecting Russia to Crimea. Interesting. Okay. And then we did get some sound from Caroline Levitt. I'll play that in a second. So as we're talking about this, right? About how the majority of we've conditioned ourselves to take table scraps. And I'm done with that. This was sound from Robert Reich, and I'll just play it for you. He's referencing the movie Bug's Life, and I think it's really appropriate, so just listen to this.
Someone told me to watch this clip.
Was that ant that stood up to me?
Yeah, but we can forget about him.
Yeah, it was just one ant. One ant. Yeah, you're right. It's just one ant.
Yeah, boss. They're puny.
Puny? Say, let's pretend this brain is a puny little ant. Did that hurt?
Nope.
Well, how about this one?
Are you kidding?
Well, how about this?
Wow. They put this in a children's film, huh?
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1.
Tyranny.
And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line.
I would show this clip in my class. You let one ant stand up to them, and they might all stand up. You see the power of solidarity, the power of all of us together. Individually, we feel helpless, lonely, often frightened. Together, nothing can stop us. No tyrant can rule us. No dictator can demand from us subservience. Together, we're powerful.
When government fears the people, there is liberty. When the people fear the government, there is tyranny. Okay? All right, let me go back to the breaking news regarding what I'm interested in is that there's finally a statement from the White House. So this is I haven't heard this yet. This is Triple K. I'm sorry, Caroline Levitt. No, she's not wearing her cross. Doesn't look like it, at least. What's the statement here? Where is it? Okay. Let's see what she has to say.
Negotiating table, and he's made that very clear to both. But as for how the president feels about those talks and what took place there, I'll let him speak on that.
What's the president's reaction to that Ukrainian drone attack, stunning drone attack on Russian air bases? I'm sure he saw that. What's his reaction?
Well, look, the reaction is this war needs to come to an end. And this war has been brutal from both sides. Too many people have died. And the president wants this war to end at the negotiating table. And he's made that very clear to both leaders, both publicly and privately.
Wow, that says a lot. That says a lot.
Those talks and what took place there, the war needs to come to an end. And this war has been brutal from both sides. Too many people have died. And the president wants this war to end at the negotiating table. And he's
wow. That is really, I'm not surprised. So I'm going to toe the line. I'm not going to say anything. The president wants the war to end. Not any acknowledgement. No acknowledgement to the amazing efforts by the Ukrainian military to do what they did, to take out 1/3. Imagine this, right? What's the president to do? You would like to think that he would go out publicly and say, what an amazing effort by the Ukrainian military. Again, like I said earlier, use it as a patriotic rallying cry. Use it as that. Use the bully pulpit for a change to say, listen, because of American taxpayer investment into defense of Ukraine's sovereignty, this is what the Ukrainian military was able to do. They took out 1/3 of the bombers that have been attacking Ukraine, killing innocent civilians. Well done, Ukraine. Nope. Why can't you do that? Oh, I know. Because you're bought and paid for, you fucking fascist. Why? Instead, it's just like, the president wants this war to end. Yeah, no shit. We all want the war to end. Of course we do. But you think Ukraine's going to lay down? I mean, come on. That's crazy. That statement's about as I expected, although it's even a little bit worse. Okay, what else? More breaking news. My fucking mod team is amazing. You guys are the best. All right, so there are a little bit more best mods on TikTok, smartest chat on TikTok. I'm very lucky. Ukraine strikes bridge connecting Russia to Crimea with underwater explosives. The bridge that connects Crimea to Russia is something that Vladimir Putin has just long desired to have because it increases access. But let's see. Ukraine said on Tuesday that it hit the bridge connecting Russia and the occupied Crimean Peninsula with explosives planted underwater in its third attack on the vital supply line for Moscow's forces since the full-scale war began in 2022. Ukraine's security service, the SBU, said on Telegram that its agents had mined the piers of the road and rail Crimean Bridge, also called the Kerch Bridge. Also called the Kerch Bridge, and then detonated the first explosive at 4:40 a.m. Tuesday morning. The whole operation took several months, it added. The agency said that it used 1,100 kilograms of explosives, which severely damaged the underwater pillars supporting the bridge. Russian officials did not immediately respond to Ukraine's claims. Traffic on the bridge has been temporarily suspended, the bridge operator announced on its official Telegram account. Although the scale of the damage was not immediately clear, Tuesday's attack is the latest example of the SBU's attempts to blindside Moscow and demonstrate that there are costs to continue its war. Sunday, the SBU launched the audacious drone attack on Moscow's fleet of nuclear-capable bombers stationed at various Russian airfields thousands of miles away from the Ukrainian front. Vasyl Malyuk, the head of the SBU, said the attack caused an estimated $7 billion in damage and struck 34% of Russia's strategic cruise missile carriers, which have been used to pummel Ukrainian citizens throughout the war. The SBU said Malyuk had also overseen Tuesday's attack. God loves the Trinity, and the SBU always sees things through to the end and never does the same thing twice. We previously struck the Crimean Bridge twice in 2022 and 2023, so today we continue the tradition, this time underwater. He stressed that the bridge is a completely legitimate target since Russia uses it as a logistical artery to supply its troops fighting in mainland Ukraine, as well as serving as a vital supply line for Moscow's troops. The Crimean Bridge also has a huge symbolic value for Putin, embodying his objective to bind the Ukrainian peninsula to Ukraine. Built after Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, Putin opened the bridge in 2018. The project cost around $3.7 billion. So, interesting. Think about these two attacks, right, by the Ukrainian military. No civilian targets. I think there were 7 people who lost their lives as estimates. They could have been field workers. It could have been people that were, but it wasn't an outright assault, whereas the Russian bombers are used to attack schools, hospitals, civilian populations. How come our president has not acknowledged that once? He talks about the unaliving on both sides. It's quite the stretch, right? Interesting. We'll watch that because I'm sure more things will pop. More things will pop today. What else? Okay. Covered that. Okay. So here, let me do this instead. So I mentioned Rand Paul earlier. Rand Paul, senator from Kentucky. He has not been someone that Mr. Trump has liked. Rand Paul has gone out publicly many, many times and said, I am not voting for this crap. I'm not voting for intentional expansion or raising the debt limit. He wants more cuts. So he's no hero. because he wants more cuts, but he also says, I'm not going to vote for this. And he may be a key vote. From Mr. Trump 29 minutes ago. Rand votes no on everything, but never has any practical or constructive ideas. His ideas are actually crazy. Losers. The people of Kentucky can't stand him. This is a big growth bill. Okay. I want you to, this is what he has to say about this. Oh, Rand Paul. Rand Paul has very little understanding of the BBB, especially the tremendous growth that is coming. He loves voting no on everything. He thinks it's good politics, but it's not. The BBB is a big winner. Mr. Trump, because of tariffs, our economy is booming. Okay. Where's the one that I wanted to read, though? All right. We talked about this before as we are going through our exercise of the media manipulation and how the right and the conservative echo chamber uses institutions as a target, whether it be, media that's not the echo chamber, college, democratic institutions, healthcare, whatever it might be. So Mr. Trump said this.
Michael Wolff, a third-rate reporter who is laughed at even by the scoundrels of the fake news, recently stated that the only reason I'm, quote, beating up on Harvard is because I applied there and didn't get in. That story is totally false. I never applied to Harvard. I graduated from the Wharton School of Finance at the University of Pennsylvania. He's upset because his book about me was a total bomb. Nobody wanted it because his reporting and reputation is bad.
We recently saw Mr. Trump's transcript from Wharton, and he was a well below average student. I think it was 1.8, and I'm trying to confirm. I've seen many people share it, and it does look legit. I think it was like 1.82 was his GPA or something like that. So my guy, it's not a flex. It's really not a. It's not. Hold on. It's really not a flex when you talk about things like that. Hold on, where is it?
I know words. I have the best words. But there's no better word than stupid.
Yeah, that is true. Okay, so I want to get back into our... Do I have anything else I want to cover off on real quick before I get back into our breakdown of conservatism? I think I did that. I covered that one. All right, this is interesting. Ben Shapiro. We know who Ben Shapiro is, right? Ben's been a little quiet lately. And I will give Ben a tiny little bit of credit for some of the things that he's been saying about the Trump administration. This, for example.
You want President Trump's agenda to succeed. Taking jets from Qatar is not the way.
Ooh.
Taking real estate deals from Qatar is not the way.
Ooh.
The largest obstacle to any administration is scandal. From Watergate to Whitewater, scandal-plagued administrations have a really tough time gathering the political capital necessary to actually effectuate their agenda. And that's why it's unbelievably important that the Trump administration avoid scandal. That is the reason I'm worried about this stuff. Yes, I think inherently it is bad. I do not think this is good. I think if we switch the names to Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, we'd all be freaking out on the right. Let's say if Qatar was giving Joe a $400 million jet for his use at his presidential library after his presidency, or if Hunter launched a crypto firm with the son of Antony Blinken, and then launched a series of crypto products in which mysterious strangers, including foreigners, were investing. Oh, wow, that crypto firm was being regulated by Joe's administration. We'd all have been pretty upset on the right. We might have said that it was worthy of some coverage.
Crazy, right? Isn't that amazing when you literally just talk about the truth? It's got to be a freeing feeling, right? Like, yeah, scandals don't generally go well. They generally don't end well. And we went through this exercise yesterday about another day, another scandal. And we went through the long laundry list of scandals. And here's Ben Shapiro, who's been in the pocket of the right for a very long time. He's part of the echo chamber, but he's also been a little bit, sort of independent, I guess you could say, in his thinking. But here we are. Ben's like, the fact that, you took a $400 million jet from the Qatari government and your kids are connected to crypto schemes. If that had happened with Joe Biden and with Hunter, oh my God, they would be rolling out the gallows, right? So it's interesting. that he's done that. So he's kind of, I'm not going to say he saved face. I'm certainly not going to go down. I'm not going to go that far. Okay. Since we're on the topic of Mr. Trump, I just want to remind people who's got his finger on the button.
The drone is killing tremendous numbers of people. You hide behind a tree and the drone comes down and it circles you with fire. You don't have a chance. The tree comes down also, by the way. It's so intense. I mean, you see these trees being knocked down like they're being sawed down by a top of the line timberman, like you know who? Sean Duffy. Do you know that Sean Duffy, the head of the transportation department, who's working right now on the airports and getting a system because Biden didn't do a thing for 4 years, and Pete Buttigieg was the head, and he goes bicycling to work. And instead of using hydraulic, like on tractors that can handle anything from hurricanes to lightning to anything, they use magnets. It's a new theory. Magnets are going to lift the planes up, and it doesn't work. So we've opened up the shower heads, the faucets, the toilets. They're seriously overweight, and he takes the fat shot drug. This is a different panel than I've had. Everything's computer. I hear so much about the word groceries. I used to use groceries a lot on that trail. A word that's like sort of an old-fashioned word, groceries. But groceries is the word that's the most accurate word. Basically, what we're doing is equalizing. There's a new word that I came up with, which I think is probably the best word. It sort of represents something that's both horrible and beautiful and strong and miserable, weak. You turn on the water, drip, drip, drip. China has total respect for Donald Trump and for Donald Trump's very, very large brain.
Okay. Sorry. I had to reset. More conversations about the big, bold, beautiful pile of shit bill from the twice impeached, 4-time indicted, such abusing frauds or convicted felon. Passing the one big, beautiful bill is a historic opportunity to turn our country around after 4 disastrous years under Joe Biden. We will take a massive step to balancing our budget. No, because that's not part of the deal. You didn't make that budget resolution because you could say a mandate of this bill is to balance the budget. No. More lies. We will take a massive step to balancing our budget by enacting the largest mandatory spending cut ever, and Americans will get to keep more of their money with the largest tax cut ever, and no longer taxing tips. We know that that's not true because it's only cash tips, and with 90% of all tips in the service industry are now credit card tips. So again, more fucking lies. No longer taxing tips, overtime, or Social Security for seniors. Again, more lies. Something 80 million voters supported in November, 78 million. It will unleash American energy by expediting permitting for energy. Again, deregulating, which causes polluters to pollute, and et cetera, and refilling the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which Joe Biden did and made the American public money because he sold it high and bought it low. Good job, Joe. It will make American air travel great again by purchasing the final air traffic control system. Guess who's connected to that? Starlink, anybody? Anyway, we'll secure our skies from our adversaries by building the Golden Dome and securing our border by building more of our wall and supercharging the deportation of the millions of criminal illegals Joe Biden allowed to walk right into our country. It will kick millions of illegals off Medicaid. 1.4 million is the guesstimate, and they're already not on it. They only receive care in an emergency room. And women and children, pregnant women and kids get access to care in 14 states. Again, more lies. It will kick millions of illegals off Medicare and make sure SNAP is focused on Americans only, which it is. It will also restore choice and affordability for car purchases by repealing Biden's EV mandate and all of the green new scam tax credits and spending. The one big, beautiful bill also protects our beautiful children by stopping funding for sick sex changes for minors. With the Senate coming back to Washington, I call on my Republican friends in the Senate and House to work as fast as they can to get this bill to my desk before the 4th of July. Thank you for your attention to this matter. What about Biden? let's try to look at this objectively. You can't. Sorry, you just can't. I'm trying to make a point there, but you can't. So just in that dribble, that non sequitur, that long single sentence with improper grammar and use of commas, he told numerous lies. Like he, again, conditioning the American public to believe that what he's telling them is the truth. That statement ends up in conservative news outlets and then in the minds of MAGA voters, and it's the truth. It's not the truth. We've already done the math. We know what's in the bill, okay? We know it's there. Here's the issue. Once again, opposition to that are considered unpatriotic. People, even in his own party, who say, well, some Republicans don't think the cuts are deep enough. So let's kick more people off Medicaid. Let's raise the age of retirement age for Social Security, which is a cut. The whole myth regarding tax on tips, guys, it's only cash tips, and it's 90% of people in the service industry now receive their tips via credit card. Okay, there's tax on that still. So it's the entire thing has just become this talking point. This is what frustrates me more than anything else. Is this information is publicly available. If I can find it, they can too. But they won't. Oh, no tax on tips. Okay, yeah, but it's only cash tips. Well, that's fake news. Okay, so then can you counter that? Well, yeah. Where'd you learn that? CNN. No, I don't watch CNN. Where'd you learn that? I got it from the bill itself. Well, that's rhinos doing that. That ain't real. President Trump told me no tax on tips for anybody. Okay, well, again, it's not no tax on tips for everyone. It's only cash tips. Oh, that don't make sense. I pay myself and my cousin. We always leave a $5 on the table, so therefore it's everybody. So everybody pays cash on cash. I go to the Waffle House and they don't take credit cards. They only take cash. Well, that's cool. I appreciate that, my guy, but that's not how it works. And scene. Sorry, I'm kind of out over my skis a little bit today, but it's this kind of stuff, right? Because this bill is going to be it's not going to get voted on as is in the Senate. Okay, they're going to make changes, so it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It was scary good. It's sad. It's not going to happen as is, which means it's going to have to go back to the House, which means it's not going to pass by the 4th of July. It's not going to happen, right? It's not. There's too many things that are going to violate the rules of the parliamentarian. We played that sound earlier. There's too many things that the Senate Republicans are not going to go for, right? So it's not. So this is, and you know what? Let's talk about it for a second. Two of the fundamental principles of the Trump administration, economically, right? Tariffs and tax cuts. Tariffs have already been ruled the way in which he approached them, remember, by IEPA. Let me just get the exact language of what IEPA is again. IEPA is the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA. Enacted in 1977 is a U.S. federal law that gives the president broad authority to regulate international commerce and impose sanctions under specific circumstances, particularly when there is a declared national emergency. It allows the president to deal with unusual and extraordinary threats to the U.S. national security, foreign policy, or economy. Okay? So that lower court, that district court, I'm not even sure what level, I think they're at the district level, lower court in Manhattan, whose sole focus is to address things like this. They said there's no emergency. So therefore you can't use this emergency power because there's no emergency and you've not made a case that there is. So they ruled according to the Constitution based on what the law says. Okay? The lies from the right, I'll get to my point in a second. The lies from the right, Caroline Levitt saying a liberal activist judge. No, it was a 3-judge panel, one appointed by Reagan, one appointed by Obama, one appointed, Reagan or Bush? Maybe Bush? Could have been Bush. Either way, 2 Republicans, one of those Republicans being Trump and Obama. So like, here we go, right? So more lies in an attempt to kind of filter into mainstream media, conservative media, that it was the radical leftists that did this. Reagan, Obama, Trump. Thank you. I thought it was Reagan. Thank you, Starlight. Thank you. Reagan, Obama, and Trump, right? So two conservative, although Trump's not a conservative, two Republican appointed judges and one liberal appointed justice said you're violating the law. So the foundational principles of his entire economic budget are around tariffs and tax cuts. And there's a strong possibility that neither of them are going to be executed on. So what's left? Oh, well, let's tell the American people that it's brown people. Brown people are the problem that we couldn't get this law passed. The trans community are the reason that we couldn't get this bill signed. Radical woke leftists are why we can't cut illegals out of Medicaid, Medicare. That's what's coming. That is what's coming. And then you get a statement from Caroline Leavitt when a promise was made to end the war. Not any acknowledgement at all to what the Ukrainian military did. Instead, she just says, yeah, well, the president wants the war to end. We all want the fucking war to end. So if the big, beautiful bill does not get passed by the Senate, it is another massive legislative failure. Another one. And what's the response going to be? Who are they going to blame? They are the party in charge. Who are they going to blame? They'll blame Rand Paul. They'll blame rhinos. Felice and I discussed this yesterday. An endorsement from Mr. Trump during the first administration was a very powerful political tool. Not so much anymore. We saw that in the midterms, right? We saw that in 2022. Trump, even in some cases in 2024, even Trump, preferred candidates lost bigly. They did. They lost bigly. So if he wants to make threats to primary people, then let him do it. The problem is you don't have any courageous conservatives that are willing to stand up to it. Conservative Republicans in the Senate primarily, right? The map is tough in 2026 for the Democrats to win back the Senate. It's tough. It's a hard one. House, not so much. So if you don't get this done, if you don't pass your economic agenda, and first of all, it's not going to pass as is because of what we discussed earlier. And I've got the breakdown on that a little bit. It's not going to pass as is. We know that. Okay. Do I have that? Did I break that down? I don't know if I did. Reconciliation is the special budgetary process used by the U.S. Senate to pass certain types of bills, especially ones related to taxes, spending, and the federal debt. It limits debate to 20 hours, meaning it avoids the filibuster. Reconciliation bills can pass with a simple majority, which is crucial when one party holds the majority. Reconciliation, though, is subjected to the Byrd Rule, directly affecting spending, federal spending, and or revenue. Under the Byrd Rule, provisions must have a budgetary impact, and extraneous provisions like policy changes without budget impact can be struck out by the Senate parliamentarian. So let's say the party wants to pass a massive legislative package, for example, tax cuts, climate investments, healthcare reforms, but they don't have 60 votes. They might use reconciliation to bundle major budget items into one big, beautiful bill, pass it with a simple majority, but be limited to budget-related items at the discretion of the parliamentarian. That's kind of where we sit. So, long story short, like we discussed earlier, this bill has what experts have said are really pushing the margins as to what's considered acceptable under the rules of reconciliation. We'll find out, but we know that there are certain things that aren't. So certain things are going to have to come out. Who are you going to blame? Your entire agenda, your entire economic agenda, your promises to America are tied up in tariffs and are tied up in the tax cuts. That's it. You have nothing else. You don't have a plan to expand healthcare. You don't. In fact, you have a plan to cut healthcare. You don't have a plan to expand on investments in infrastructure. Instead, you want to pull out provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure Bill, and the CHIPS and Science Act. You want to pull all those things out, things that were proven to be beneficial. Remember, we went through this exercise before. Like, if you have $100,000 and you say, okay, you've got $100,000, you can either buy a brand new RV or fix up your house. We all know that the practical responsible decision is to fix your house. right? That's what investments under the Biden administration did. Investing in infrastructure, investing in chips and science, investing in lowering pharmaceutical drugs, right? The GOP, conservatives want to buy the new RV. It's an investment, much like we discussed yesterday when we're talking about making cuts to the IRS. They make cuts to the IRS. Why would you do that? The IRS pulled back billions of dollars from tax cheats, just like the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. They pulled back billions of dollars for the American taxpayer. Billions with small investments. Why would you want to cut those? Oh, I know. It's because you want to support and protect tax frauds, and you want to prop up the banking industry, who are the ones that are ripping people off. Makes perfect sense. Can people see that? You guys can, because you're the smartest chat on TikTok. But can people really see that? Can people see what's going on? Try to have a conversation with someone regarding waste, fraud, and abuse. Give them the math. Okay, I think, and don't quote me on this, but I think the budget for the CFPB was like $2 billion. And they recouped like $15 billion or something like that. A massive return on investment. Same thing with the IRS. Like adding those 80,000 tax workers and enforcers, the right spun that is to say, they're coming after you. Can't get blood out of a stone, as they say. They want to come for my tax. You can audit me, knock yourself out. I don't care. I got nothing to hide. Literally nothing. But why would you not want that to happen? That $80,000 or 80,000 employees pulled back billions of dollars from tax cheats. So the only way this tracks, the only way you can justify doing that is if you're trying to hide something. It's not waste, fraud, and abuse. I don't know if you guys saw RTP's appearance on Jubilee, but it was great. But he called out this one particular section. They're talking about Doge and Elon Musk in particular regarding waste, fraud, abuse. And he's like, I'm glad that he was put in that position to identify waste, fraud, and abuse because it showed the American people how big a fraud he is. And it's so true. Promises of trillions of dollars. Then there's reporting that Trump said, was this all bullshit? Like questioning it. I mean, yeah, we knew it was bullshit. Why would you do it? You would do it because it's fodder for your base. You do it because you have to tell your base something to distract them from the fact that millions of Americans are going to lose their health care. That millions of American children are going to starve. That is not hyperbolic, friends. That is not fear-mongering. That is reality. There are people in liberal communities, conservative communities, families. There are families that make sacrifices that moms and dads, single moms, single dads, couples don't eat so their kids can. In the United States of America, in the year 2025. And conservatives want to make it worse. I'm not wrong. And I'm not wrong. Why would you cut SNAP benefits? Why? Why would you kick people off Medicare and Medicaid? Why? What were the estimates? I think Crow, if you're out there, you can come up and talk to me. I think you had done a study on this about the amount of incidents of fraud. Like it's so minimal for people. And I know there's stories of people selling their EBT cards and things like that. Okay, but think about the circumstances of which someone would do that. Think about that. Mods, would anybody mind reaching out to Proletariat, see if he's free? I'd love to talk to him about that because I think it's an important point since we're now at close to the finish line as to whether or not this bill's going to get passed. Proletariat, are you out there? But that's an example. So again, the power of the conservative movement through the right-wing echo chamber, telling their voters, telling their people in their spaces that the fraud, there's so much fraud. We're going to pull back money. We're going to save Americans money. No, we're not. It's an attempt to justify it. It's an attempt to pay for tax cuts for the rich. That's all it is. You got to pay for it. And for Trump to say there's a balance, going to balance the budget, no, you introduce a balanced budget resolution in an attempt to do that. And they're not doing that. You're exactly. Think exactly, Navy vet. Why would people sell their EBT? So they can pay their fucking rent, so they can keep a roof over their head. These are the decisions that American families are making every single day. Every single day. It's now summertime. Schools are closing. There are families that will not be able to afford to feed their kids in our country. There are federal employees that lost their jobs, okay? That lost their jobs under the guise of waste, fraud, and abuse. Federal employees. You think those families aren't going to suffer? There were school lunch programs that were adopted during summer months during COVID, okay? Republican legislatures in states said no more. No more. Why? This is hard for me to talk about because I'm just like, part of the mental health burden that I've been carrying around a lot lately is I am so tired of seeing people suffer. It just guts me to see how people are suffering. And we, in our community, we talk about, we want to help everybody. And of course we can't. I don't understand why you could look at your voters and say, you know what? I think giving free school lunches is just a bridge too far. That is socialism. We can't do that. That's a handout. We're talking about food. We're talking about giving children access to food. There's been studies done time and time again about the importance of a simple thing like breakfast or lunch. Think about yourself. You walk out of the house in the morning. Like I don't eat a big breakfast. It's like usually like, bananas or smoothies or things like that. Only because I never have. But by lunchtime, I'm hungry. When I get off the air here, I'm hungry. Get off the air. That's an old reference. Think about a kid who there's no food in the house. Then there's no free lunch at school. Then they have to deal with the societal shame and the stigmas connected to it because they can't afford a school lunch. That kid goes without food. That kid goes without food in America in 2025. Food. For what? Hi, Heather.
Good morning, Steve. How are you?
I'm okay. How you doing?
I'm the same. I'm okay. But as a kid who often didn't get food in school, I relate to that. I often was hungry throughout school, and it was not a good time. And this is what I don't want that for any kid, because I was that kid. And now here we are, and it's going to happen to kids. And it's just upsetting. It's just upsetting. That's all I wanted to say is just feed the children. Yeah. I don't understand why it's a problem to feed kids.
I agree with you, Heather. Thank you for coming up. I appreciate you. I'll drop you down. Hey, you got it. Hey, yeah. Crow, thank you for coming. You probably got the bat signal, my friend. How's it going?
I did. And I'm like, yeah, I can drop what I'm doing for Steve.
I appreciate you. I was talking about, I think you were on, you might have been on with Mishi, but you were talking about how someone was talking about all the waste, fraud, and abuse, whether it be in EBT programs and or social safety nets. And you because I know you work in that space, and you said that you have a system to identify fraud, and the fraud was so minimal. Can you talk about that a little bit? Did I mishear that? Because you were talking about something like that, right?
Have a second. I want to clear this door. It's a very loud door.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate you.
There we go. So yeah, we have, it's called the exchange system. Almost every state has it. There's only 2 states, and that is California and I think Oklahoma. Don't quote me on the second one, that don't participate in the exchange system. Essentially, it's automated alerts for everything from you getting a new job to I got a lottery ticket more than $500 to your bank account to your taxes to being on social programs in another state. And if you so much as put a toe out of line, we get an alert, and I have to clear those alerts daily. It's the first thing I have to do every day besides like an expedited food stamp case is to go through alerts to make sure that my clients aren't defrauding the system. And like for something example, we also get this thing called the Paris 9 exchange. And what that is that's interstate transactions. So let's say you are on food stamps and you go with your cousin in New York, for example. The next month, you're going to appear on my report because there was an out-of-state transaction. And I now have to, I now have like 15 days to verify you exist within the same county that I'm in, or I shut off your things. And that's, I call you a few times. If you don't answer, I send you a letter. If you don't answer, I just close everything down because I can no longer verify you are where you say you are.
So, to your point, there is a system in place that currently functions. You are one of the people that monitors it, that roots out potential fraud. I mean, obviously, you can't catch everything. We know that people are selling their EBT cards to pay their fucking rent or whatever else. That happens.
Even with that, what it is, how that works, because I've had people bring that up before. Part of the reason we switched to cards over paper food stamps, like those of us are older, remember when food stamps were literally paper things. Sure. We switched to cards to reduce that because with the card, if you come into my office like every few months ago, oh, I lost my card. The first one, yeah, that's a gimme, whatever, people lose their card. Second one, I'm going to ask you a few more questions, but after that, I'm at my discretion to just go, no, we're not giving you any more cards until we've completed an investigation because in the last year, you've requested 2, 3, 4 cards.
Okay, so there again, somebody pointed this out, a system of checks and balances to root out fraud. There's investigation. We know within any system, there's always going to be elements of fraud. There's always going to be bad actors, but by and large, overwhelming majority of people, there is a system to monitor it in place, and it provides essentials for people who need it.
I also want to apply, I also want to inform you all of a clarity of definition, because when the average person hears fraud, they think theft, like people are stealing things. Right. When you look into the OIG reports for fraud, how they define fraud is any improper payment. So that is one of the criteria they use. So let's say you were supposed to get, Steve, you were supposed to get $150 in food stamps, and I, the caseworker, messed up. I miscalculated, and I only sent you $100. That actually goes into the fraud bucket because it is an improper payment, even though it was an underpayment.
Okay. Yeah, I get that. Like, you're right. I'm glad you clarified that because just because someone doesn't agree with a program doesn't mean it's fraud or waste or abuse. It's just maybe a clerical error that somebody's going to label as fraud.
The gross majority, whenever you look at like any of the fraud statements of these programs, a lot of it is going to be admin error. Like I said, and a lot of it is that miscategorization because like I wouldn't consider an underpayment fraud. I consider it an admin error. But OIG, the GAO, that all gets lumped together with fraud. So like I actually sent less taxpayer dollars out, but OIG and GAO are going to count that as fraud because it was still an error that happened.
Do you have any idea, and if I'm putting you on the spot, I apologize, the number of people in our country that are beneficiaries of EBT?
No, I'd have to look up that number to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean,
easy search though, because
go ahead. I was going to do it while we're on the spot. Again, friends, like think about what it is that we're talking about here. Like we said earlier about how we cannot settle for table scraps. Got to be fucking demanding this shit. Demanding
41.7 million people per the USDA.
41.7 million people are beneficiaries of SNAP, and as Crow just described, it's not an enterprise where people are taking advantage of the system. 41 million people. Cuts to SNAP benefits are going to impact 41 million people.
And the same carries through on Medicare and Medicaid. When you look at Medicare and Medicaid fraud, the gross majority of that is going to be provider fraud, miscoding, misbilling, things like that. And that's why I've been pushing back against the work requirements, because you're not going to stop provider fraud, which is the largest contributor to Medicare and Medicaid fraud, by putting restrictions on clients. Like, that's not going to make the doctor, the pharmacy code stuff right.
Exactly. Hey, man, I appreciate you dropping things and jumping in for us to clarify that. I really appreciate that, buddy. Thank you very much for what you. I appreciate you, pal. Have a good day. All right, see you later. That's awesome. 41 million people from the source. He works in that space. 41 million people. What is that? Like 12%? Something like, what's the number? I forget. I mean, something like that. Who knows? 12, yeah, roughly 12%. 12% of our country. 41 million people in the richest country on earth, in the richest nation in world history. 41 million people are on government assistance, SNAP. And conservatives think that's too much. It's population of California. There you go. 41 million people. We did the exercise earlier. Undocumented immigrants are not eligible for Medicaid. Only in case of emergency. And that accounts for less than 1%. Commerce Committee has to cut 10%. 14 states provide Medicaid coverage to citizens who are undocumented, but only children and only pregnant persons. And they're going to cut that. And 41 million people are on EBT, SNAP benefits. That should disgust every single one of you. That should make you so fucking angry that you're going to do something about it. That is disgusting. Case by case, you're right. Thank you, Crow. Again, 41 million people on food stamps. And cuts to the VA and federal employees losing their job. We already know in good economic conditions that people live below paycheck to paycheck. The reason there's an increase in credit card debt is because paycheck to paycheck ain't even cutting it anymore. And these tax cuts are not going to benefit the middle class, just like the first time. And we're going to, and Wick, you're right. And we're going to have to pay more because of tariffs. And we're kicking people off of Medicaid. And 41 million people are going to lose their SNAP benefits. Well, not all, but it's going to impact 41 million people or more. What the fuck? That's what apathy has done, folks. That's what privileged leftists who felt like they couldn't dirty their hands and vote for someone who was arguably the most qualified person to ever run for the presidency because you didn't like her stance on Israel. Fuck you. 41 million people on food stamps, cuts to school lunch programs, children in our country not being able to eat. 41 million people on food stamps. Children in our country not being able to eat. I think I might have misspoken on something. He wants to come back up.
I just came back. There was one piece that you're missing in your things they're trying to do that's actually going to be exceptionally detrimental. One of the things they're pushing for is to remove the age of dependence for social programs to 7 years old, which means
I heard that too. Yeah.
So what it is ABOD, which is what you're ultimately all these conversations are about. ABOD. It's an acronym everybody should get to learn. It means able-bodied adults without dependence. If you have dependents or you're not able-bodied, you don't have the work requirements. So the reason they're trying to lower the dependent age to 7 is to make it so that once your kid is 7, the work requirements apply to you, and that's going to knock even more people off. And they're not giving people more money for childcare. Wow. They're not giving people more money for childcare. And I don't know about you. I have 2 kids. I could not, just be like, hey, Connor, you're 7. Cheerios are in the cabinet. I got to get to work.
Exactly. I mean, do they even do, is there any analysis done on children of special needs who aren't even available, can't go to, well, again, we talk about the cuts to the Department of Education. So there's not even going to be any support structure for them. So what happens to those?
And not every
Americans?
state has programs like we do. In Pennsylvania, we're fortunate. We have this thing called the Pelican system, which assists low-income families with childcare. But most states don't have that. Like Pennsylvania has it, New York has it, a few other places have that. So like here, we'll be able to like catch some of those people. But the gross majority of Americans, if kids are found to not be dependents at age 7, are just going to be off the programs, to put it flatly.
Unreal. Thanks for that, buddy. I appreciate you.
Yeah,
Again.
that's all I came back up to mention was the 7-year-old dependent thing.
All right, you the man. Thanks a lot, pal. Talk to you later. Okay, again, just gets worse, right? Right. Once again, this whole thing to me comes around to the fact that the rise of conservatism, fueled by Fox News and then the elimination of the fairness doctrine, has created this. There are people in our country, okay, who claim to be God-fearing Christians who are supporting what we just discussed with Crow, who are supporting and voting for children to starve. Let's call it what it is. I'm not going to beat around the bush. We already have massive examples of food insecurity in our country. What happens when families can't feed their kids? Crime increases. If you're in a marginalized community, then we know our criminal justice system does not support you if you don't look like me. Right? So what me? Right? Made it bigger. But we got to make sure that corporations and the 1% are protected as they continue to accumulate wealth, as they continue to punish the middle class. There is no anymore. Felice calls it out properly. There's the rich and then there's the working poor. We're all in that category. You don't have to settle for this, folks. We do not have to settle for this. We do not have to accept table scraps. We do not have to accept little bites of the apple. Take the whole fucking orchard. Status quo Democrats, moderates, they're not going to help. They're not going to help. You have to demand this. You have to demand it. You have to say, enough is enough. And whatever draws your attention politically, whether it be gun rights, whether it be more protections for the underserved, whether it be for healthcare, whether it be for education, whether it's all of it, you do not have to accept it. Apathy is where democracies go to die. We find ourselves in this position because we, the collective, have let it happen. Because 62% of us who have the right to vote consistently. Less than half midterms elections, and even further fewer when there are special elections. That is what happens. Conservatives in DC are laughing at you, laughing at us. They're laughing because they say, I cannot believe that Americans are so apathetic they're going to allow us to take food out of their kids' mouths. They're laughing. What does that say? Like, seriously, what does that say? You do not have to settle for this. You absolutely do not have to settle. You could be the ant. You could be a million ants. You could be the 3.5 to 5% of the population that has to consistently stand up and voice your opinions. Hey, Obi, how are you?
I'm listening to you. And as the angry empath, I'm going to punch you in the arm, rub dirt on it, and then give you a hug.
Yeah. But I mean, it's the truth though. I mean, we're supposed to accept table scraps. Right. The government can work for you. It absolutely can work for you. But you've got to be willing to say, I'm going to demand change. I'm going to drag people to the poll. I'm going to shame people for not voting. I'm going to remind folks what's at stake. I'm going to knock on every door. Who did you vote for? Conservatives. Do you know that you're voting for kids to starve? Shame people. I don't give a fuck. Drive around your neighborhood with a big flag that says conservatives want kids to starve. Vote progressive. Because it's true.
It is true. Think about this. There was a point in time in our history where we had debtor's prison.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Right? Now let's pull some threads. There was no integration allowed during that period of time either. The othering of people was quite popular during that period of time. Now let's just march forward to today. We're seeing the largest investments in private prisons in United States history.
Yep.
We're seeing judges being ignored, court orders being ignored around deportation. We're seeing United States citizens and one veteran so far that have been deported.
That we know of.
Yeah. We're seeing mass, if it passes, we will see the largest cuts to any social safety net ever since social safety nets have been invented.
Correct.
They are trying desperately to get back to child labor, hence that dependents over the age of 7 don't count. Right?
Yeah.
They are trying to punish people for being poor, right? There is absolutely no reason for this, right? Because we're seeing history rhyme again, right? And it's all about the same thing. It's all about people who have amassed all the power, just like the railroad barons and the oil barons did, and keeping all of that wealth. And then eventually Congress took action and broke the railroads up and broke the oil companies up. But you know what they never did? They never held the people with all the money accountable. So all that money didn't disappear. Those families prospered, right? And when they talk about the industrial age of the United States and the Enlightenment of the United States, it was all of that dirty money. And that dirty money went to all of those families. And all of those families then went into, in quotes, legitimate businesses, right? Where they were able to take that generational wealth and continue to grow it. And Trump is of the opinion, as are all conservatives, that it's a prosperity perspective, right? And this is what happened. This is what happened under Ronald Reagan.
You too can achieve, right?
That's
the
right.
Lie.
The welfare queen was a white woman,
yeah,
a grifter,
exactly,
and a fraudster, right? We only know that because she got caught, right? But Ronald Reagan did everything he could, and his administration did everything he could to make you believe that she was a black woman. Right? They know who she was.
And think about the conditioning that's done to the conservatives today, because that term welfare queen is thrown out there, and what's the first thing that they think of? We know.
Yeah, and they specifically mentioned that she drove a Cadillac.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, why is it that the middle class African American families were so loyal to General Motors? Because it created a middle class for them. It enabled them to buy houses because they had really good union jobs with really good pay, which fostered brand loyalty and lifelong family loyalty to a company in which General Motors and Ford have like 4th generation family members working for them, right?
Sure.
But they
good
took
old blue collar job, as they say, right? Yeah.
They took that brand loyalty and they took that loyalty to union and middle class work and twisted that around. right? And Trump does the same thing. Listen, Trump is probably the stupidest person to have ever failed as highly upward as he has. I mean, it is absolutely amazing.
Failing up.
His one
Agreed.
professor, because you were talking about his grades, his one professor literally said that he was the stupidest person that has ever been in his classroom. And the dude taught for like 30 years. I want you to think about that, right?
I know.
How many thousands of students in a 30-year professorship career have you seen come through a classroom, right? I can't imagine, because that school is huge. That's a really big university, right?
Mhm.
And he didn't just say it once. Every time he's asked, he's like, no, you're by far the stupidest person, right? We know for a fact that his dad bought his admission.
Yep.
Because he was too stupid. This whole thing
Correct.
about Harvard isn't about Barron.
No.
Because whatever, Barron's going to NYU. Barron's going to a good school, right? Like, so that's not the focus. The focus is that Harvard does have a very diverse population. And after that court case, right, in which Harvard lost and the Asian Student Association won, what happened? Things got worse. Things didn't get better. The exact same opposite of what they did, because they took this student association and they fucking groomed the shit out of them and got them to fight Harvard. And then Harvard had to change its policy. And then what happened? Fewer students that they were fighting for got admitted because Harvard had to change the way they admitted students. That's what this is all about. He cannot stand that marginalized communities were able to go to Harvard, and Harvard was like, hey, listen, we're not going to lie about how much money we're sitting on. We're sitting on a metric shit ton of money. And you know what?
Yeah.
If your parents make less than, I don't know, so it's like,
I think it's 80,000 annually.
we recognize that $180,000 a year for a 2-income family is not going to afford Harvard tuition. You just can't, right? Even with loans and Pell Grants, it's not enough. Which is saying that out loud is fucking absurd. So what did Harvard do? They were like, fuck it, we're gonna bifurcate our endowment, and we're gonna set up this super aggressive fund, and we're going to make sure that those people who are academically qualified, you know what? Fuck it, you're not paying tuition. That pissed Trump off so
Absolutely.
bad,
Absolutely.
right? And it pissed off conservatives because they were like, well, Harvard's for white Christian men, and blah blah blah, right? But here's the thing, right? I need people to not just be angry at the 86 million fucking assholes that didn't vote, right?
Yeah.
I need you to be angry at your elected official, because
Of
if
course.
your elected official isn't doing anything and you're not doing what Matt's doing, not that everyone can go do what Matt's doing, because that's a lot, right? Like showing up every day to the office with another piece of paper and another subject to talk about. But he's trying to hold his elected official accountable, because apparently she's nowhere to be found and no one seems to know who she is, including members of Congress, right?
Correct.
That's what we need you to do. Now, I will pause for capitalism, because this is also super important. Hey, people in the chat, if you could please do the heart me, if you haven't done the heart me yet, if you could please continue to power tap the screen, that would be awesome. Also, there are links right up above where it says conservatives are the problem. If you enjoy the content, if you enjoy the amount of work that Steve does, and it is a large amount of work, help the guy out, right? Buy him a cup of coffee. Get him a Happy Meal at McDonald's. Buy him some good Vermont maple syrup. I don't know, whatever it is for you, right?
Yeah.
Although
Sure.
shit, a Happy Meal is like $15 now. It's not very happy.
Yeah, that's so happy.
It's an inflation meal.
Yeah.
But help Steve out. Do what you can. He's not going to ask, right? We know that there are grifters on this platform that don't show receipts when they collect money. Steve will show receipts when we collect money to help other people. But you know who we keep forgetting to help because he keeps not wanting to ask and he gets mad when I do bring it up. So suck it up, Buttercup. We need to help Steve. Steve needs help. This takes a lot of time, effort, and money. And as a small business owner, like getting contracts with customers is really fucking hard. And it takes a long lead time. And you got to spend a lot of time and hope that you're going to get paid. And even then, it doesn't work out sometimes.
Yeah,
so if
that's
you can,
true.
Reach into your front pocket and help a brother out.
I appreciate you, buddy.
Just saying.
Since we're pitching stuff, I'll take this opportunity to remind folks that the link tree that's in my bio, you can go and find this link. It's called Beats for Good. It's the first link you'll see. What Beats for Good is part of a concert called the Do Good Festival that's happening in Central Vermont this summer, weekend of July 16th. Inviting some large, prominently known acts called the Fray and the Plain White Tees are the headliners. This Beats for Good is open to high school students and their bands and or singer-songwriters in upstate New York, Vermont, and New Hampshire. There were 127 submissions. My daughter's band called Punch is one of the finalists. You go to the voting form. When you click on voting form, you're looking for the list of bands. Her band is called Punch. Please vote, because the band that receives the most votes will get to open the show in front of a crowd that looks something like that. This was last year. Final tally, there were 11,000 people there. So if you've ever been a musician or if you've ever had rock star dreams, who hasn't? Imagine being in high school and standing in front of a crowd of 11,000 people and getting to sing and getting all that love from the crowd. So I would appreciate that. Again, that link is in the link tree in my bio. You're looking for the voting form under Beats for Good and vote Punch. Thank you, friends. I appreciate you. Thank you, buddy.
That crowd smells of Axe body spray, patchouli, and dirty socks.
And weed.
And weed.
It is Vermont, after all.
That's true.
Yes, it's true. But you can vote once a day. You can vote multiple times a day if you have, alternative email addresses. I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm just saying if you were so inclined. So thank you, guys. I appreciate you.
Did you cover off on the Bernie interview about the election?
In regards to Kamala Harris and her approach? Yeah, I talked about that a couple days ago. And so I think he's right. I mean, I think, I don't have the sound for that, but I can paraphrase. A missed opportunity, I think, for the Harris campaign. And I understand they didn't have a lot of time to do it. And I do think she ran a good campaign, but to be objective, and I can look back on this, I think there were opportunities to speak to some of the things that we were hearing from a large swath of American voters, which was the kitchen table politics. And I think that has been a mistake from messaging from the conservative Democrats, meaning that in an attempt to motivate your voters, you turn these events, these campaign stops, into concerts. And there's a lot to be said for that. But when you have the full runway to run a campaign, you can do that. When you have 90 days or 100 days, whatever it was, and you don't speak to voters, I think that was a problem. I think the Harris campaign spoke at voters, but not to voters. And I think that was an opportunity missed. Again, Kamala Harris, no doubt about it, was the most qualified person to ever run for the presidency. I think that's a full stop moment. And I don't know if there can be anybody who's even more qualified than her. That being said, I think there was some mistakes in the campaign strategy because there was still this connection that a lot of people made who were looking to vote. They said, well, it's all about the elites. It's all about Hollywood elites. It's all about fancy performative stuff. And again, those kinds of campaigns can certainly bring a lot of people out, which it did, but they didn't turn into votes. And that's the problem. And I'm hoping that strategy can change.
Here's a Harvard parallel for you, and rather esoteric historical one. Kennedy assembled a bunch of bright young minds from Harvard that he called the best and the brightest, right? And they got the whole thing about Vietnam wrong, like everything. Everything was wrong because everything was just off of these preconceived notions about communism.
Thank you, Elizabeth. You're very kind. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. I appreciate you. Sorry, Obi.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Hearts in the chat for Elizabeth. This is the problem with the DNC, is they are surrounded with really brilliant people who are just woefully out of touch, right? And it reminds me of most people who grew up not understanding why you would take coupons to a grocery store. Or why you would buy one brand of peanut butter versus another, right? You know, here's how I want to kind of explain this. Obviously, I love
Skippy Crunchy. Let's be real.
Well, fucking Crunchy, because Creamy's for children. There is a tag. It's called the bin tag. And on the bin tag, it tells you how many pennies per whatever the measurement is that thing is sold at, right? And if you take somebody who grew up not like never having to go grocery shopping because it was always just done, and then they just grab the brands that they grew up with, and then you stop them and you show them the bin tag, and then you show them how many pennies it is per ounce, right, for a product. And then I explain to people, hey, this peanut butter and this peanut butter are manufactured in the same plant. One does a run and it has this label at the end. Then another run is done and it has this label at the end. How do I know this? Because the Republican Party has destroyed manufacturing and allowed the monopolization of manufacturing to happen in the United States so that all of your peanut butter, your cookies, your crackers, all of that stuff is made in a few select plants throughout the United States because it's about the efficiency of getting things from point A to point B.
Yep.
But
That's really well said.
the store brand peanut butter, right, is made in the exact same plant that your Skippy or your Jif or your Peter Pan is made in, depending upon your geographical location. Because that manufacturer doesn't give a shit about the label at the end of the line. They only care about.
Yep.
Right.
Private label, co-manufacturing, it's all the same.
And this is the problem with the Democrat Party. They still think they can sell their shit for 5 cents a fucking ounce when their return has only been a penny every ounce. And it's been that way for 30 fucking plus years. Bernie was so right to call this out.
Yeah. I mean, and
be
again,
mad
I
at
think
your elected officials.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, we've got to be willing to be objective about this. And I think it's true. And this has been something that the right has been saying for a very long time. And there, again, to be objective, there is some truth to it, that the Democratic Party is associated with elitism. Whether it's true or not, that's the perception. Okay. Now we know that Trump's cabinet is stacked with the 1%ers. We know that Peter Thiel and Elon Musk in front of the campaign. We know that, but their messaging has connected to independent voters a lot better than Democratic messaging has. So that is an opportunity, I think, for the Democrats to realize that, which is why I say progressives or conservatives. Again, it's got nothing. This is not a knock on Kamala Harris as a candidate. Again, the most qualified person to ever run for the presidency. The strategy behind what they did in 90 days was effective to gather enthusiasm and energy at campaign stops. It did not transfer to votes. That plus misogyny, racism, bigotry, etc. All those were factors. Strategically, though, I think Bernie was right on the money.
Yeah, and this is something that I think you should talk more about and should have larger panels about, because the party of Democrats is built on elitism.
Yeah.
Since Kennedy. I mean,
the perception is, yeah, even though the policies are much more socially oriented for the middle class and the working poor, the perception based on conservative media And the removal of the fairness doctrine has done exactly what you described.
Yep.
Hi, Heather.
Hey, I just came up with this little theory, kind of popped into my head the other day. And you know how they're building more private prisons. They're running all the migrants out of the country. They've changed the child labor laws and have fired all of these federal employees. In their minds, all of those people, the kids, the fired federal employees, the people that lose their jobs because of other things, they're going to step in and do all that work that the migrants were doing. You know, picking crops, roofing, construction. They think that Americans are just going to step into those jobs and they're going to throw kids out in the freaking fields.
Yeah,
And
that's when we're talking about the for-profit prisons, that's where the labor force is going to come from. No doubt about it.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
And
that's been the long game.
Yeah. And it started with Reagan and his little welfare queen, the apathy. Reagan started that with the "you can't fight City Hall," the welfare queen, you know, all of those tropes. All of that started with Reagan and the Southern strategy. And now it's become prosperity for America or whatever, Project 2025 BS. But
yeah. No, you're right. I mean, again, and like I said, you know, we have to give credit where credit is due. This has been the long game that the conservatives have played in our country. And because of apathy from the left, and because we've been focused, again, rightly so, to be focused on the things that are themes that I support, which are progressivism, human rights. The problem is those things are boring politically. And because of that, it takes a long time to change an entire belief set of a society to say that we have to prioritize healthcare, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The right has been just grabbing little bits of hate talk here and there. They've turned it into this massive political movement, and it's effective. And now we're talking about 41 million people that are recipients of SNAP benefits that could potentially lose their benefits, and kids will starve because of that. And a lot of it has to do with liberal and democratic apathy, sadly.
Yeah. And I'm on Social Security widow's benefits right now. And I'm working 20 hours a week. But I'm also partially disabled. And I turned 65 this summer, which I'm being forced onto Medicare.
Yeah. Well, you're in that spot. You're in that gray area.
I could lose everything.
Absolutely.
I could literally lose everything. And I'll be dependent on my kids.
Well, we're out here fighting for you, Heather. I appreciate you joining us every day to talk about it. You're a good egg, and I believe that the better times are ahead. Just keep the faith, okay?
Okay. You too. Right. You do a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Have a good day. Talk to you later.
You too. Bye.
There's so many people that are in. I mean, I forget the exact math for disability benefits and or Medicaid benefits, but if you work, the expectation from the conservatives is that you got to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. If you work, if you're able to work, you could work too much to be able to take advantage of benefits. If you can't work, you're told that you're mooching off the system. And I'll remind you, friends, the biggest recipients of welfare in our country are the 1%ers. They are the biggest recipients of corporate handouts, of governmental handouts, of any subset of our population. And it's not even close. Meanwhile, 41 million people are potentially at risk of losing SNAP benefits, which means families that are already under the threat of food insecurity have to deal with that. We have to stop settling. No more. This goes back to the fairness doctrine. Okay? So we played the sound earlier. We talked about how Fox News has used their cacophony of lies, good word, their lies that they like to spread, blaming everybody else because because Ronald Reagan said, I'm going to listen to the people that elected me, the Federalist Society, the Heritage Foundation, all the people that were masking their hatred towards marginalized communities to say, we want a better, more prosperous America. White is what we mean, but that's what we want. So, Mr. Reagan, you know, this whole thing about fairness and we just want to make sure that we hear all voices because we don't want to be suppressing speech. Fairness doctrine was a U.S. FCC policy from 1949 to 1987. It required broadcasters on radio and TV to cover controversial public issues and present opposing viewpoints in a balanced manner. It applied to licensed broadcasters, not cable newspapers or online media, aimed to promote fairness and diversity in public discourse. Broadcasters had flexibility, but were obligated to make good faith effort to balance views. Created in 1949 amid concerns that limited broadcast frequencies gave a few outlets disproportionate influence. Expanded to include requirements like personal attack rules, the ability to respond to attacks, and political editorial rules with balanced endorsements, meaning it used to be you had to give equal airtime to anybody running for public office. That changed. In 1980, FCC argued that the doctrine was unnecessary and possibly chilling and or squelching free speech. 1987, the FCC formally abolished the fairness doctrine, saying it no longer served the public interest in the age of expanded media outlets. Some argued its repeal opened the door for partisan talk radio. It did. Let's not talk about some. Rush Limbaugh, for example, and eventually contributed to polarized media. Supporters argue it fostered balanced media and informed public debate. Critics claim it restricted free speech and created bureaucratic hurdles. In recent years, with concerns about media polarization, disinformation, misinformation, and downright lies, some have proposed reviving a version of the fairness doctrine. However, its return faces strong opposition based on First Amendment challenges. So, you know, we've had this conversation in this space many, many times about media literacy, about confirmation bias, cognitive dissonance, and all these kinds of things. Well, a lot of it, if you think about everything that we've talked about today in the begin and the growth of conservatism, because our society is more liberal than traditional conservatives want. It is more diverse. We're striving for more equity. We're striving for more inclusion. We're striving for more accessibility. Conservatives don't want that. So they wanted the fairness doctrine to be repealed so that they didn't have to give voices to opposition. For example, they wanted to create a safe space, in my opinion, a web of lies that's perpetuated into what we see now. Fairness doctrine repealed 1987 allowed broadcasters to adopt one-sided political programming without having to present opposing views. Entirely one-sided. Talk radio exploded. Rush, Laura, Obtuse Angle, Ingram, Sean Hannity, cable TV, Fox.
Don't forget about Lufra O'Reilly.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Echo chambers, algorithm-driven feeds. It's all part of it. It's all led to the strategy. And again, this is an example where the conservative movement is miles ahead of liberal response. Miles ahead. And it's not even close. Liberals stand on the side of protection for and the promotion of opposing voices, meaning that we want marginalized voices to be heard. We support civil liberties. We support freedoms to be yourself. All those kinds of things. I've talked about this before. It is boring politically, but you don't have a response to it when you've got people like Hannity and Charlie Kirk and all those people, just the ability to say whatever the hell they want, wherever the hell they want, with millions of people tuning in every single day, getting that muzzle velocity of misinformation and disinformation, and there's no response. And because we have combined that with apathetic leftists, it's why we're going to lose elections. It's not because of what we stand for. It's because we don't motivate and activate our voters. It's really sad. So if you take away anything from our conversation today, it's a reminder that 41 million people receive EBT benefits, SNAP benefits. 41 million. 10% cut.
Staggering number.
Staggering number. Exactly. 10% cut to Medicaid, Medicare. Less than 1% of those people that it's less than 1% of people that are undocumented that receive Medicaid benefits, and they only receive them under emergency care. 14 states do authorize care under Medicaid for undocumented, but it's only children and pregnant people. And that is what's happened with the perpetuation of lies, dishonesty, misinformation, and deceit. And because there's not a response, an organized, critically thought out strategy that's consistent across liberal spaces and progressive spaces, that's what's happened. So it's not just, like Obi said, it's not just the 80 million people that voted for Trump. It's apathy. It's the 86 million people that didn't show up. It's the constant struggle that we have to move the needle from shit. What's it, 62, 63%, generally speaking, that show up for presidential elections. If we got that number to 65%, why
it'd be
now?
lights out.
It would. I'd like to think so. We're still going to deal with, we still have to deal with our election interference and all that kind of shit. But the majority of people support progressive ideals, whether it be universal health care and or responsible gun legislation and or an increase in public funding for public education and or an expansion of public health. That's what's at stake. That's what's at stake. And I just don't get why people don't understand it enough. And that's really troubling to me more than anything else. But I guess we'll see. We have an election coming up next year. I believe we'll have one. Some people don't. I do. Hi, Sue. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Fine, thank you, Sue. What's on your mind?
Well, I was listening to you talk about what the Democrats have done to actually lose their people. And I was listening to another live yesterday that was talking about Charlie Kirk and the his Turning Point USA thing that he's done, and how the Republicans they've taken this as a long game, and he goes to the campuses, and what he does. He goes to the different college campuses and gets young men who are angry and upset, but he is targeting also young women, I guess, that want to enable this. But I guess one thing that I've seen, and I was born in 1960, so I was too young to really understand what was going on in the 60s, but I did hear about it, and it seemed like there was so much music, and the musicians and the entertainment industry was really involved in getting the people pumped about things. And you look at Kamala Harris's rallies and stuff, and there was so much energy there and all that. And I guess what I was thinking is that we need something that's the equivalent to the Turning Point USA to target the young people to go out and make these things events. Because it seems like the young people, like what you were talking about, your daughter's going to be in that, what'd you call it, doing good or?
Yeah, Beats for Good. Yep.
Okay, yeah. Things like that. You said 11,000 people? I mean, it just seems like to me that if I'm just a stay-at-home mom, that Nana now, but, that doesn't really have any experience in this, but I observe, and it just seems like to me that there's a lot of people out there that know how to organize these things. And it would be, I'm always there to help, but it seems like to me we need to get the young people excited about what you were talking about, the be good and doing good, and somehow bumper sticker length,
bumper sticker politics. I agree.
Yeah. Nothing too hard for people to remember. And I don't know. It just seems like to me that we need that because we need the young people to step up. And I don't know how many of the 80 million that didn't vote were young. I don't know the demographics of the ages, but it seems like to me that we need to get them to understand, because they're not hearing what is actually happening. I don't think a lot of them aren't anyway, about they're not paying attention because they're trying to pay their bills and all of that. And we need some kind of hook, something to get them excited.
You're right, Sue. I've talked about this before, and we can certainly pick apart demographics, but we have to call it like it is. White men are holding society back.
Oh, I agree. I
That's
totally agree.
We can narrow it down to every single voting block, whether it be Boomer, Gen X, Millennial, or Gen Z. It is white men that are holding that. So this male loneliness epidemic is bullshit. It's self-inflicted. So again, it is white. It is white men. So the interesting thing about it, and I think this is going to be something that's going to be dissected for years to come. At least I hope it is that the things that, let's use Gen Z as an example, because I pick on Gen Z a lot because they deserve to be picked on because they didn't show up. What Gen Z talks about, they talk about it in terms of social justice. They are out there protesting. They're out demanding rights. They want protections for all, but they don't show up to vote. And that can't be denied. So we have to connect activism to voter engagement. And that's what we're not getting. And I think that was another mistake that the Democratic machine made, is they made the connection of voter registration to people showing up to vote, and didn't happen. They made the connection of people going to these rallies and making social media posts, but it didn't translate to votes.
So what is Charlie Kirk doing different? I guess that's my thing. That
Charlie Kirk
he's hooking these young men.
Well, look, so if you ever watch some of his videos, not the ones that he selectively edits, but if you watch the entire thing, what is the majority of the crowd that's staying there waiting to talk to him?
Young white
men.
Yeah.
Exactly. Young white men. Right? And it's rage baiting. Right? So he's lying to them too. He's lying to them. It's effective. So what I think is, you see, the counter to that is when he is not in an environment that he can entirely control, the conversations are different. So if you look at the video from his time at Cambridge University, he got destroyed because he doesn't debate with substance. He's a culture warrior.
Yeah.
He debates with lies and rhetoric and in all of his hatred towards marginalized groups. Right?
Yeah. Yes.
So, if I were in charge and I was running the strategy, you don't need a counter to Charlie Kirk. You just need to be prepared to address the fact that he continues to lie.
Okay.
Now, I know the Unfuck America tour tried to do that, and that's a different conversation. But it doesn't take a counter person to Charlie Kirk. First of all, he's been building Turning Point for a decade or more. This just didn't happen overnight. So there doesn't have to be a counter to that. There just has to be an awareness that this is the kind of message that's getting to young white men. Right?
Right.
So if white men if we want to influence white men, then that ship may have sailed, at least right now. But it's white women, it's white moms. They're still part of the problem, and they're not necessarily going to the Turning Point rallies. They have to understand that they're victims of the patriarchy too, that they have fallen victim to the red pill effect, that they are now sucked up in the manosphere because they are belittled. Yeah. They're belittled. And again, this is a strategy shift. This is an entire strategy shift. Apathetic. To be honest, if you can look at this back, there's Kamala Harris lost to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
That should tell the Democratic Party everything that they need to know.
Oh,
I don't think there's any more. I don't think there's any more that needs to be unpacked. You have a 34-time convicted felon, sexual predator, liar, con man, grifter, criminal who beat a powerful, strong, most highly qualified black woman who was the candidate. And that should tell the Democrats everything they need to know.
Yes. Yes. They just need some kind of strategy, like you said, a strategy shift. So anyway, well, I won't keep you. I just wanted to thank you. Bye-bye.
Appreciate you. Have a good day.
All right. Bye-bye.
I'm serious, right? I mean, we've got to stop. For somebody who does, I look at things differently than a lot of people. I don't look for the solution. I look for what was the problem. Like, why did that fail? I want to go back and do my after action review to say, on my crisis call to say what happened. So if I'm gathering the decision makers at the DNC machine, I would say, okay, We lost because we did not connect the dots between voter enthusiasm and votes. Why? Because we were seen as elitists, whether it's true or not. And there is some truth to say the Democratic Party has become elite, no doubt about it. I think you can blame Hillary Clinton for a lot of that, quite frankly. She didn't campaign in the Rust Belt, not once. She didn't spend time there. The inability to connect with rural voters. We don't need to cross the political boundary line. We don't need to have MAGA converts. But there are a large chunk of people, the single largest voting bloc in our country are independents. And it used to be an absolute layup for Democrats to win. Why have they shifted away? It's not because independents think that, Republicans are better. They're just like, I can't vote for Democrats. I'm just not going to show up. The biggest chunk of voters that didn't show up in the 2024 election, independents. Okay? That's got to tell you something. It's not that hard. Political science is not overly complicated unless you let it be. The strategy needs to be, we need to do a better job speaking to voters and not at voters. And we'll see if they listen. They want to pay me large money to go fix their problems for them. You know where to find me. Every Monday through Friday, 8 to noon Eastern time, right here. Hey, buddy,
in a state that is not able to be located on any map.
Right, exactly. Come here, bud. Hey, come here. What's this? Come here. What? There's a squirrel outside. Sorry. Okay.
You know what would be interesting? And think on this. It just popped in my head, so I don't know if it's going to make sense. Democrats keep waiting for the GOP to be able to actually pass legislation that's going to take money away from people so that they can turn around and say, see, we told you so. Right?
Interesting strategy. Yeah.
But they're not going and talking to two of the largest employers whose personnel rely heavily on benefits. That would be Walmart and the United States military. You never see any conversations with that group, right? And that's just a subset of the working poor, right? The fact that people in the military need to rely on any kind of federal assistance, we've spoken about this many times, but it's like, just fucking pay them enough so that they don't need it, right? And Walmart's like, well, we're going to raise prices because of the tariffs. When is Walmart going to say, which is never, well, we're going to have to raise our employee wages, and prices may or may not go up, but we just want to let you know that we've finally decided that we're not going to wait for the federal government to increase the federal minimum wage. We're actually going to do something about it. Why aren't the Democrats having these conversations? Right?
It's a fair point.
These are the conversations. Like, Chuck Schumer, what the fuck are you waiting for? You've had so many opportunities to get shit done, and you just keep fucking doing this. And this is one of the things I hated about Joe Biden. Oh, this is the way we do it. This is the ceremony, the pomp and circumstance of the Senate. We don't want to rock the boat. This is the way it's always been done. Fuck that. Blow that shit up.
Two things can't be true. Two things can't be true. You can look at Joe Biden's legislative accomplishments, and they are great. And you can also say, but he played by the rules too much.
Yes. And let's keep in mind, those rules are not written in stone.
No.
When your party gets to come in power, you get to a certain extent, not fully, obviously, but there's a lot of chipping at the edges that you are literally allowed to do because you're the majority party. And
correct.
Every single time, except for one guy, Harry Reid, was the very last senator in the Democrat Party that stood up to the GOP with a big middle finger. Of course, he'd have to get on a step stool to have been
from a leadership perspective.
suggestions or something like that, right? Like, you don't have to follow the rules, right? Because you get to make the rules up as you go along. Mitch McConnell, thank you in the comments there, was another brilliant one, right? He was really good at any time he needed to just to change the rules to make it work, right? And he got his party in line.
Yep.
Why don't we have leaders in the Democrat Party doing the same thing? It's because we allow these people to sit there for 30 years, 35 years. We don't force mentorship. We don't force them to be actual leaders where they take younger generations coming into the House or the Senate, right? And literally saying, "Hey, listen, I'm out in like 5 years. So let's figure out how to get you ready to ascend," right? But the GOP is really good at that, right? Like they're really right. I mean, granted, they're all white men, so if you see a photo of the GOP senators, good lord, that is a glum lot if I've ever seen one. Nobody fucking smiles in that party, right? And I have to believe that part of that's about the guilt and shame they probably feel when they go home, right? But
yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. I mean, and Ted just pointed this out. Harry Reid is also has to wear the shame of changing some of the sanitary rules, which made it easier for Mitch McConnell to pack the court for conservatives. So there's good and bad, like everything, right? There's good and bad. I think the point that I wanted to spend, and I have to wrap, the point today that I want people to understand is conservatives are the problem. Now, you guys have got to do yourself a service and understand that there are conservative Democrats and conservative Republicans that, in my opinion, should be in the same bucket, because they're the ones that are holding the country back. They're the ones that are keeping us from progressing to the point that Obi made, keeping us from progressing to the point that Obi made, keeping us from progressing to the point that Obi made, keeping us from progressing to the point that Obi made, keeping us from progressing to the point that Obi made. So, demand more. Do not settle for table scraps. Do not accept little bites of the apple. When somebody says, "Hey, I'm going to go out and fight for expansion to the ACA," put your hand up and say, "I'm sorry, fuck that. I want universal health care. You want my vote? Earn it. You want my vote? Tell me what you're going to do to ensure that my retirement's protected. You are going to guarantee protections for the 41 million people that are on SNAP benefits. You want my vote? I want to see a constitutional amendment to demand the minimum wage goes from $7.25. If we track this, the minimum wage, if we added the cost of living increase since it was last voted on, minimum wage right now would be $22 an hour. We can afford it. Do not let your prices will go up. They're going up anyway. Don't let them lie to you. Take the fight to them. Let them be afraid of you. Right now, tyranny wins because we are bending a knee to the body politic. Fuck that. Take it back. Take it back. It's not their country. It's our country. It's an oligarchy if you let it become one. Enough. No more. Enough. Get angry. Get pissed off. What do you stand for? Human rights? Boring on a bumper sticker. But we know what you mean. Last thoughts, Obi?
Do something. Just go and do something. Even if it means bringing a meal to a neighbor that you know is having issues with obtaining food. Go to Costco, right? Most people don't need shit from Costco because it's enough to feed an army. How about share it with your neighbor? How about go and introduce yourself to your neighbor if you don't know your neighbor? Just do something. If you want to be like me and be lazy, just fucking write checks if you can write checks, right? Do something, right? Whatever that is, please just do something. But in 4 years, we cannot allow a younger generation that's a part of the 86 million people that didn't vote. Talk to them, find out what it is that prevented them from going to the box. Learn from them if you expect to teach them something. You've got to be willing to listen to them. If you're not willing to listen, they're just going to stay at home again, right? Because they don't give a fuck. They really don't. They are. I don't know what generation they're going to end up being called, but I think "don't give a fuck" would be a good one, and that's not a negative thing. They have lived through all of these emergency drills their entire school life, and have had to live with the knowledge that these mass events happen, and then they had to live through COVID, right? They are under a tremendous mental strain, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. And my last comment will be, please take care of your mental health. Please touch grass, find some sun, be good to yourself. Hugs and kisses. Obi out.
Love you, buddy. See you later. I'll talk to you later.
Love you.
All right. He's right. Can't pour from the cup if the cup's empty. Okay. So again, there's always something to talk about. He's right though. We've got this particular time in our history right now is really going to test parents, because our young men are being influenced by things that they shouldn't be influenced. Like I say, two things can be true. It is all men until it's no man, but our young men are under threat, right? I don't buy the loneliness epidemic because that's self-inflicted. What I'm saying is that we as parents, or those of us who want to be parents, be sure you know what your kids are doing. Be sure that you're aware of the influence factors that are permeating the minds of your young men and eventually your sons and your daughters as well. So keep that in mind. I know Matt is live with Felice right now, so go visit USMC Angry Vet. Matt, we'll be back here tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time. Thank you, mods. Thank you, chat. I'll do one last plug for this if I could, in case anybody just joined us. If you go to the link tree that is in my bio, you'll see this is the first link. It's Beats for Good. Go to the voting form, and you're going to click on the voting form, and you're going to look for the list of bands, and you're going to vote for Punch. I'm asking you to do this because this is a contest that my daughter's band has qualified for. 127 applicants, narrowed down to the top 10. Her band made it. If they win, it's based on the number of votes. If they win, they get to open this massive concert that's in Vermont this summer in front of a crowd of more than 11,000 people. Thank you all for doing that. I appreciate you. See you tomorrow morning. Thank you, mods.